Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto x Korra x Asami x Kuvira? Part 1. Huge shout out to NeonZangetsu for this story. If you want more awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Change is a funny, fickle thing. It can be gentle and kind, or severe and harsh. Good or bad, depending on your point of view. Light or dark. Change can be any one of these things. It can come in the form of anyone. Anything. Sometimes the world is ready for this change, sometimes it is prepared. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes a new age starts. And when it does, there is no going back. Sometimes you're ready for change. Sometimes you're not. Republic City was not ready for this change. Definitely not. I'm the Avatar. Korra muttered to herself as she stalked down another vine-covered street. I should be able to fix this. So why hadn't she? I've failed. Words roiled in her head incessantly, rolling from her tongue like a mantra. Her dark skin flushed, both with anger and exertion, chestnut-colored hair unbound and sticking to her face, she struggled to keep from lashing out. Tiny tongues of orange flame flickered from her fingers at the thought of her fifth and final failure. This would have been so much easier if she hadn't been disconnected from her past lives. Aang and the others would have had some much-needed wisdom for her to draw upon. But there was none of that now. She was alone. Korra hated being powerless. She loathed this feeling of weakness, of being unable to help the people of Republic City. She was supposed to be the Avatar for crying out loud. Yet half the time it felt like she didn't know what she was doing. Aang at least had someone to guide him. Another Avatar. One not of the elements but, as legend had it, another realm entirely. An avatar of the gods. Some called him the avatar of change during the waning days of his life, before he'd sacrificed it in the service of the world. She could certainly use a guide like that now. Rumor had it that someone had seen him 13 years ago, but there was nothing to back it up. He was probably gone as well, lost to the mists of time like her past lives. No, there would be no help from the past. He was extinct, like all the other avatars before him. In this matter, Korra realized she was on her own. That didn't mean she had to like it though. Still, it didn't make any sense. She mastered all of the elements. Learned to commune with the spirits. Vanquished a force of incredible evil only 2 weeks ago. And yet for all her power, she was powerless when it came to vanquishing these vines. They were nearly everywhere after harmonic convergence. And thus far any attempt on her part to eradicate them only resulted in the loathsome weeds come back all the stronger. It wasn't the spirit's fault, she supposed. After all, she was the one who had chosen to leave the portals open. But if she'd known this would happen, she might have reconsidered. As things stood, today's news conference has proved disastrous. An 8% approval rating? Who the hell were they talking to? Not even Asami's optimism had been able to cheer her. Something needed to change in the city. Maybe she needed to change. Leave even? Something had to give, and it certainly wouldn't be the spirits or the vines. She'd even tried to send them away peacefully with her new technique, and that had only made things worse. She just wanted to make things better. Was that so wrong? If not, then how the heck was she supposed to do it? What am I supposed to do, darn it? Frustration finally claiming her, she threw her staff down to the ground. The delicate instrument clattered harshly against the streets, skittering away and out of arm's reach. Almost immediately she regretted the action, clamoring to retrieve her beloved weapon. It rolled to a halt at the feet of an old, frail-looking man, his body stooped and hunched beneath that dirty brown cloak. A whiskered face pinched in confusion for a moment as he regarded the staff at his sandaled feet. But instead of reaching down for it, he stomped, bending the earth at his feet to shoot the weapon into his hand. "Does this belong to you?" he asked, proffering the glider to her. "Hey, thanks for the help." Humbled, she accepted it. Someone outside her circle of friends actually being polite? That was new. Turning, she prepared to return down the way she'd come. "If you would give an old man a moment of your time," he spoke softly, "I might be able to help you." Reluctantly, she turned around. He was just an old man. How could he possibly help her? But then again, what did she have to lose? "Something troubles you, my young avatar." Bright blue eyes bored into her behind the cowl. "Your spirit carries a heavy burden, one you're not certain you can bear." Looking back, Korra should have realized it right then and there. Those whiskers should have given him away. That familiar way in which he'd addressed her was cause enough to sound the alarm. But upset as she was, still very much frustrated by her failure to help the people of Republic City, she failed to recognize to whom she was speaking. "I'm kinda having a rough day," she admitted, taking a seat beside him on the worn, battered bench. Part of her was pleased to finally have a civilian address her with something short of sneering anger. For the last 2 weeks she'd had to endure countless jeers and booing inquiries that she would have rather left unspoken. It was a nice change of pace, she thought. "Aren't we all?" A tittering laugh escaped his dried mouth, warbling into the humid space between them. "Change is not always a pleasant thing, Korra. But sometimes, it is a necessary part of life. We cannot expect it to always be gentle or kind, but we must accept it nevertheless. Even if it hurts us. To not change with the times is to remain rigid and stagnant. Without it we can never progress. Look," a wrinkled hand took its leave of a sleeve and proud set a tiny, green leaf from within its folds. "If the leaf does not fall from the tree in autumn, then it cannot be born in the summer. That is life. Death. Rebirth. We are all part of the cycle. Caught up in the flow of the river, bound to its flow, unable to escape it." Korra frowned, her gaze roaming across the vine-infested streets, the buildings that had once been whole. "So what you're saying is, I just need to go with the flow. If only it were that easy." The stranger chuckled across from her. "No, what I'm saying is this, you can't stop change. It is impossible. The best we can do is try to make it a positive one. After all, when you've lived as many lives as I have, it really puts things in perspective." Something about the way he said those words gave her pause. What did you mean by? When next she turned to look, he was gone. All that remained of the man was a plume of smoke. Strange old man. And she would have left at just that if she hadn't heard his voice again. Hadn't seen him again, standing straight and tall, back unbowed by age. "Well, I'll be damned," she heard them speak again, more quietly this time. Stronger and lacking the crack of old age. "Looks like Aang and Azula did a bang-up job of it while I was away." Frowning, Korra backpedaled, just in time to catch a flash of blonde hair rounding the corner opposite her, vanishing into the shadows of a nearby alleyway. Something she knew not what caused her to dart after him, but instead of apprehending the stranger, she found herself standing in an empty street, no sign him in sight. A blur of black and red flashed in her peripherals, soaring into the sky. "Republic City, eh?" Once more that strange voice taunted her with its subtle mockery, this time hailing high over her head. "Not a bad place. I guess it was worth dying for after all. Could do without the vines though. Guess this is what happens when you take a 100-year nap. Maybe I should have stayed and caught up. Nah. I've probably got kids and grandkids who are dying to see me." He laughed at himself, the sound carrying deep and far and somehow strangely familiar to her ears. "Too bad I have no idea where they are." Without thinking, she airbent and shot up onto the rooftops after him, desperate to follow the voice. "Wait." The old man did not wait. She was fairly certain he wasn't even that old. No wheezy old-timer should be able to outrun her in a contest of pure stamina. He flitted across the city like some sort of ghost, making impossible leaps with no airbending, just raw, physical prowess. She was running now, sweating, heart hammering as she chased him. There was no way. It couldn't be. He was gone. Dead. Deceased. And even if he wasn't, what was he doing here? "Will you just," she growled, vaulting over a clothesline. "Hold on a second? Where's the fun in that, Korra?" He laughed, whirling. A swift swing of his foot bent the earth and hurled a pillar of stone at her, one she effortlessly bent aside. Too late she realized the distraction, saw the water rising out of his pouch to drench her, head to toe. Thoroughly soaked, she surged after him. Since when was he able to bend? "Stop!" She airbent at him, a powerful gale that tore back his hood and sent him stumbling. Even as he staggered, she pounced, grabbing him by the arms. It was like grabbing a writhing eel-swan. He just slipped right out of the cloak, leaving her with a fistful of fabric. "Hey!" Exposed was a young man in his late teens, his azure orbs sparkling with mirth as he skidded to a grinding halt upon a nearby silo. His outfit was oddly reminiscent of something she'd expect Mako or Bo Lin to wear and yet not. The rising red collar and black trim suggested he'd acquired this particular outfit through less than savory means. "Ah," he groaned. "Now you've done it." And here I was hoping for a little time off before I got dragged back into things again. It's only been 2 days since I woke up here, after all. Korra's jaw dropped straight to the ground and shattered the street below her feet. Blue eyes bulged, helpless sounds squeaking out of her mouth. Even with his long hair and pale complexion, it was impossible not to recognize that face. After all, there was a statue of him in the bay, right next to Aang's. But this didn't make any sense. He hadn't been seen for decades. He'd killed Fire Lord Ozai all those years ago, laid waste to the Fire Nation, put Azula on the throne, and vanished. Just like that. Removing Ozai had ushered in a new era of peace, one that lasted the world over, but his act of cruel culling had never been forgotten. Even so, it was impossible not to be glad for his return. Naruto? The blonde smiled sheepishly. It's been a long time, Avatar. What did I miss? Ha! Korra blinked, baffled by Naruto's sudden outburst of laughter, the sound nearly carried away on the winds. Managing to turn her head from where she hung onto her glider, she could see him smiling beside her, a stark streak of black and red rippling through the air without any assistance at all. It was amazing, in a word. She'd heard rumor that he could fly, but to actually see it firsthand was another thing entirely. There was an odd severity about it, the way he simply grabbed the air and molded it to his will. He didn't cooperate with it. There was no compromise. He simply took the element and made it his own. Dominated it completely. He'd been insistent on visiting Air Temple Island, but now en route he'd started to chuckle. It was all a little frightening, really. What's so funny? She asked. Oh, nothing. Naruto snickered, floating onto his back. I've just finished examining something. Watch this. Blinking, she turned her head once more. Watch, what are you doing? Bahaha! With a mad cackle, her fellow avatar erupted into flame and shot downwards, roaring toward the water below in a great gout of fire. His body literally became encased in the inferno, then he was gone, disappearing into the water itself, plunging beneath its face like a splinter. There was a silence. And then the water moved. Sloshing upward in wave upon wave, the waters gracefully parted, their folds peeling back onto the crazed blonde bender and revealing him standing below, his hands gesturing in harsh, savage movements. Korra nearly dropped clear out of her glider at the sight. In theory, a waterbender could do such a thing, but he'd have to be exceptionally skilled and impossibly powerful. The fact that Naruto seemed to be both, even fresh out of the cycle of rebirth, was worrying. If this was him when he was weak, then what was he capable of when he was at full strength? Below her, she could hear him laughing. Now that's a splash. He chortled. With a grunt, he stomped down on the seabed and shot upward upon a pillar of clay, returning to the air once more from the earth. A simple flick of air bending as he was aloft once more, leaving the precarious pillar to crumble behind him at his passing. In the span of only a few seconds, he had just bent all 4 elements, all without breaking a sweat. Surprised? He laughed yet again and flexed his fingers, clearly bemused by her befuddled expressions. So am I. In my last life, I wasn't even remotely this skilled. I think it might have had something to do with my previous death. You see, my body adapts with each new incarnation, and since I spent my last life in the presence of so many benders, not to mention that whole body-switching debacle with Azula. Or maybe I'm just an offshoot of what might have happened back then. Maybe the me as you know him actually had his happily ever after. A shrug. Perhaps this is simply a different universe altogether? An alternate reality of some sort? You're kinda breaking the fourth wall there, buddy. Perhaps. But basically, you're a bender now. Korra finished for him, not quite quiet in her disbelief. Forget the fourth wall bollocks, she didn't even want to think about the mind-numbing possibilities of those words. The contrast to all that power and his light-hearted personality was not lost on her. So this is the avatar of the gods, she thought silently. He's crazy, and kinda cute. The young avatar immediately blanched at the traitorous track her train of thoughts had taken. Gah! I am not thinking that. Not, for lack of a better word. Bingo! He chirped happily, the very act bespoke of levity. My skills are still somewhat hampered thanks to coming back 2 decades early though. I think someone's harmonic convergence had something to do with that. Those bemused words left Korra feeling more than a little guilty for her task. So unfortunately, I won't be destroying any fleets anytime soon. Was it just her imagination, or was there a touch of bitterness in his voice at that moment? Sorry, she confessed, eyes falling to the fast-moving sea below. I didn't know. Now, it's nothing. He brushed her concern aside like water off a turtleduck's back. It was worth coming out of retirement early to see this place. Even if it meant losing a few of my skills. Although, if I'm correct, I can still. His eyes flashed a violent violet, and once more, the water beneath him erupted. But this time it was as though a giant, invisible hand had come screaming down from the sky to strike its surface, scattering the spray in every direction for miles around. Naruto whooped. All right. I still got it. Looking only slightly winded from this exertion, he flicked her a thumbs up. All right then, what do you say we get back to it? I think I've earned some time to bask in friends and family. A flick of the wrist, and he was off again, streaking towards the twin statues in the distance. Korra frowned. You keep saying that, she asked, quickly trailing him with her glider. Who are you expecting to find exactly? There was a long moment of silence between the two avatars as the latter contemplated those words, his visage turning soft and sad. Almost forlorn, even. Meh, he shrugged half-heartedly, the wind rippling at his hairs. Like I said, who knows how many kids, or even grandkids I have nowadays? Higher he soared, until she nearly lost him in the cloud above. I had a few with Suki and Azula, then 2 with Toph. The only one I really had time to visit was Katara's. What was her name again? Kia, Moa. This time, Korra really did fall out of her glider, only narrowly catching herself before she could splash into the sea. But how? Let's just say, I didn't get to see much of my kids before I passed, but I thought she was Aang's daughter. Naruto guffawed and did a figure 8 amidst the pearly white clouds. Is that what you thought? I wouldn't be surprised if Katara told her that. She was always too kind for her own good. But hey, if she wants to keep that secret, then who am I to say otherwise? His old humility notwithstanding, a smile soon creased his face. Wait a second. You said Aang. Does that mean what I think it does? Korra told him. Ahaha. Another enchanting chuckle. So, those two really did get together while I was away? Always thought the little arrowhead had a thing for her. He wasn't upset, far from it, he seemed quite pleased. Good for Aang. Although I can't help but wonder how things went with him and that other girl back in the day. She was such a sweet thing. Other girl? Not my story to tell there, Korra-chan. She was beginning to realize that Naruto liked to laugh. He seemed to do so almost constantly since she'd met him. I didn't really smile much back in the old days, he explained, seemingly reading her mind. Never had the chance to see the beauty of things for what they were. But now that there's peace, I've decided to try and be a bit more light-hearted. After all, you'd have to be plain stupid to try and mess with the state of things now. Then again, maybe someone is. Maybe that's why I've returned. Who knows? Everything is changing. I'm probably just a part of it. There's a bit of a cult dedicated to you in the city, too. No kidding? He sighed. Wow, things really have changed. Unbidden, Korra's mind flashed back to the vines. Perhaps she shouldn't do anything about it. Maybe they were here to stay. It had been her decision to leave the portals open 2 weeks ago. She couldn't banish them solely for living in the new world that she'd created. Maybe. Wow! A delighted shout broke her from her reverie. Naruto had flown on ahead of her, ignoring the statue of Aang completely. Instead, he'd alighted upon a giant version of himself, a marble statue showing him standing tall and proud nearly a century before. It was the picture of righteous anger and heavenly wrath, a massive broadsword clutched in his hand, and pointing forward, as though he were leading some sort of imaginary charge in the face of impossible odds. Its posture bespoke of power and poise, lips curled back into a furious shout. Korra landed behind him, just in time to catch wind of his words. I remember this one, he murmured softly, stroking the metal edifice with one hand. This was when I led the Earth Kingdom rebellions against the Fire Nation. They really did build a statue of me after all. I thought it was a joke. Some sculptor swore a life debt to me after I saved his family. Said he wouldn't rest until the entire world knew my name. A lone tear trailed out of his eye. That was, almost a century ago now. I'd almost forgotten all about it. Standing, he pushed a hand against his face, muffling his voice. God, I feel old now. For a moment, just a moment, That laughing jester looked genuinely vulnerable. Without thinking, she approached him and laid a hand on his shoulder. "You've been gone for a very long time, remember?" She started slow, knowing how baffled and confused he must be. The world has changed a lot since then. Harmonic convergence was just the most recent one. New Kyoshi, Republic City, pro-bending games. Pro-bending? He turned and made a face at her. "Don't tell me you people made a sport of it." "Well." Her sheepish expression was telling. Korra. Her response was to dive off the statue and make a beeline for Air Temple Island. "Come back here!" Shouting, he dived after her. "I'm not done with you." "Hey, it wasn't my idea, so Next you're going to tell me Suki went and founded a school of shinobi after I died. Wow, that'd be ironic." "Ha!" The laughter died on his lips as she fiddled with her thumbs and began to whistle quietly. Naruto choked on his own spit. "Please tell me she didn't." Blue eyes twinkled distantly. "Remember that new Kyoshi I mentioned earlier?" He said nothing, so Korra hurriedly pressed on. "She kinda founded her own nation there and started teaching others, using what you taught her. She's amassed quite the following." At his thunderous expression, she dared a smile. "Congratulations, Korra." "What?" she hollered back. "It's not like I had anything to do with that either. I wasn't even alive back then." "Then who is?" he challenged. "Any more surprises you want to spring on me?" "Well, Katara's still alive." "Splendid. I'm also fairly certain Fire Lord Azula is still kicking." "And Toph?" There was a silence. Hey, look! We're here." At that very moment, she realized they'd reached their destination. Hurriedly she landed, dropping the last 10 feet or so onto the island below. A flick of airbending allowed her to alight effortlessly. Naruto's landing was less subtle. He simply dropped like a brick, landing in a heavy and pointed crouch she could have sworn made the island shake under her feet. When he stood, she could see the massive imprint his hand and boots had left upon the island, no doubt drawing the attention of everyone. That was the least of Korra's concerns. Scarce had she landed than Naruto jolted towards her, clearly still determined to get his answers. Answers Korra wasn't entirely certain she could give. Fight or flight warred within her, and the latter won out. Stubborn though she might be, there was no way she'd outlast him in a fair fight. So Korra ran. She ran, laughing like the hounds of hell were at her heels. Her laughter only incensed Naruto even further. Agile as he was, he did not know the island as she knew it, and that disadvantage only handicapped the chase in her favor. "Don't you run away from me, Missy!" he shouted, launching himself over a tree after her. "I'm not running!" "Sure seems like it, oof!" Whatever else he might have said ended as a pillar of earth erupted in front of him. Unable to stop in time, he kept right on running, plowing through the roadblock as though it were nothing more than a paper bag. Mouth full of rock and gravel, he growled at her. A hand thrust itself forwards. Flames flickered ahead of her as he conjured a ring of fire, one through which she leapt most nimbly. It continued like that for some time, the two bending the elements at one another until they finally made it to the courtyard. Then Naruto, having grown weary of their little game, called out a strange name. "Bansho Tenin, what in the that's not fair?" An invisible hand closed around Korra and jerked her backward, her body flying helplessly in reverse. And into his arms. They collided violently and went down in a tangle of arms and legs, heads spinning like a children's toy top. It ended when Korra bucked, flopping him onto the ground. She ended up straddling him with her hips, pinning his shoulders to the ground with her hands. Her face dangled over his, hair tumbling down to tickle his nose. "Got you?" She grinned, though that hadn't been the point of this chase at all. "So you do." He smiled disarmingly. Her heart skipped a beat. He really was handsome. And she hadn't had this much fun since, well, a very long time. What's going on here?" "Gah!" Korra jerked up and away from the blonde, appalled to find Tenzin and the others gathering in the courtyard. No doubt their little bending fiasco had drawn their attention. Even Chief Beifong was present. Mako, too. It was the former who had spoken, however, her harsh green eyes gazing intently at the battered blonde who still lay pinned under Korra's body. Naruto, for his part, simply lay there. "Friend of yours?" she asked. "This is just a friendly game of tag." Naruto finished. "Tag?" Lin's deadpan was barely concealed. "Yup, right." The chief of police didn't look fooled in the slightest. "Anyway, now that you're all here, and whoever the heck that is, I suppose we can tell you about the airbender we found." Korra lurched upright. Chief Beifong? Wait, you mean there's another one, Lin? Tenzin started. Naruto bristled, blue eyes bulging. Wait. Beifong? He asked. Lin Beifong? And you are? Naruto's jaw dropped to the floor. Korra thought she saw those sapphire eyes water for a moment, the dampness vanishing as he stubbornly scrubbed at his dirty face with the back of a hand. When next the Avatar of Change spoke, his words were hoarse, throaty, thick with emotion. Holy crap, he muttered, eyes threatening to tear all over again as he laid eyes on Lin. You look just like your mother, just like Toph, but where's your sister, my sister? What? Lin frowned, scrutinizing him. There was something familiar about this young man, somewhere she'd seen his face before. Once, when she'd been very young. But no. That was impossible. The sheer incredulity of it all twisted her visage into something not quite a frown, but neither was it a smile. It was him. Right down the eyes and the way his hair fell just so. The only difference was the outfit, but even that did precious little to dissuade her hammering heart. His voice. His face. They were exactly the same as she remembered. Exactly? A single word croaked out of her throat. Dad? Dad? Everyone squeaked. Been a while, huh? Naruto chuckled nervously, a twitch of the lip. That was all the warning Naruto had. Then Lin punched him so hard he saw stars. You will never be rid of me. Blue eyes snapped open with a gasp. The warm rays of the setting sun were the first thing Naruto felt on his face as he jerked awake from his dream. More like a nightmare, he thought. Then came the pain. It started in his right eye, where Lin had socked him, then spread down to his jaw. Slowly, his world came back to him in fits and spurts after that. Blue eyes opened with a wince, reluctantly squinting toward the fading daylight through the window from where he lay on the bed. Wait. A window? Bed? Someone must have moved him after he got knocked out. Damn, was his very next thought, my little girl packs a wallop. I must really be rusty if she was able to nail me that easily. Groaning, he sat up, his body protesting from the motions. Swinging himself off the bed, he landed clumsily on the floor and staggered slightly upon standing, his head still ringing. He'd been dreaming of life after Ozai, the peace he and Aang had forged together. Peace. A peace that had been shattered by the arrival of an impossible enemy, one he defeated at an equally impossible cost. Even now its voice reverberated through this skull of his, mocking him, taunting him. This foul presence was within him now, even in his rebirth, tainting his very soul. How long until it consumed him utterly? Would he be able to control himself? No, he shook his head. Don't think about that. Focus. You're here. You're alive. That's all that matters. Forcing himself upright, he pushed off the wall and stood once more. How long had he been out? His body felt weak. Drained. Perhaps all that excessive bending wasn't wise so soon after his reincarnation. He ought to have taken it east. His body was still fresh out of the cycle. It would take several days if not weeks before he was back to those terrible, apocalyptic powers that had once shaken the world to her very bones. But time, well, that was something he had in spades. Wow! A soft, musical voice chimed from the doorway. You're already up and about after taking that punch? Not bad. I've seen people laid out for weeks after taking one on the chin from Chief Beifong. Naruto turned, his vision still blurry. Korra, nope. The voice answered. Slowly his vision swam into focus. Ebon hair, dark clothes and jaden eyes. Cream-colored skin. Yup. Definitely not Korra. Blinking the spots away from his vision, he trained his eyes on the newcomer, an angel if he ever saw one, framed in the doorway. A small smile curled at his lips. In a way, she almost reminded him of Mai. Except this girl was actually smiling. Clearing his throat, he straightened, eyes shining with newfound interest. Fascinating. I don't believe we've had the pleasure, miss. He trailed off, waiting for her to give her name, Asami. Her smile grew marginally. Naruto. Without thinking, he took her hand in his and lifted it to his lips. Then he kissed it. He had the sweet satisfaction of watching her cheeks color a pretty pink. Wait. What am I doing? The sudden realization that he was flirting with a girl he barely knew crashed over him like a bucket of ice water. Was he betraying Katara and the others by doing this? Katara. It had been an age since he'd seen her last, but he was still aware of the Horatian seal he'd placed upon her all those years ago. He could feel it, tugging at the corner of his mind. He hadn't even thought of her or the others since his return. So, Korra tells me you're the avatar of the gods? Naruto forced a laugh at the question. I used to be, back in the day. Right now, I'm just an old man trying to adjust to a new world. She beeped her head aside, blinking. You don't look that old. Eternal youth can do that to you. Wait, so you're stuck, like this? Pretty much. Naruto sighed. Look, it was nice talking with you, but I need to go. His eyes drifted shut, searching for the telltale pull of his seal. He could feel the others, yet whether it was distance, or even weakness on his part, something prevented him from reaching them at the moment. No matter. He'd find a way to them soon enough. Because he had to. He needed to know if the girls he'd given his heart so long ago still felt the same or if they'd moved on. He had to. Where are you going? Asami asked. His grin was telling. To visit an old friend. And then in a yellow flash, he was gone. The Southern Water Tribe had changed greatly over the last few years. Naruto landed in a pointed crouch just within the walls, his body flashing intermittently as he cut the Horatian short. As tempting as it might have been to flash directly to Katara, he didn't want to cause a panic. Even if he had, he was fairly certain in his ability to hold off anything short of an army of benders. Besides, his attention was decidedly elsewhere, as he laid fresh eyes upon his home for the first time in an age. Eyes dusting with a glint of orange, he activated Sage Mode and gazed upon the place he'd once called home. His jaw nearly dropped at what he saw and sensed. No longer was it that tiny little village in the snow as he'd once known all those years before. Now it was a thriving populace, sprawled out in every direction. It had been rebuilt since Zuko's fateful attack all those years ago, made stronger than ever. This was where he'd first fought the Fire Nation at the beginning of the war. Then, met Katara and Sokka all those years ago. Where they'd encountered Aang. This was where he had lost his life again years after Ozai's death, sacrificed it to conquer an unkillable foe and trap it inside himself, sending both of them howling into the void where they belong. Yes, his journey had both begun and ended here. Back then, he wasn't even sure if he'd reincarnate after trapping that thing inside of him. But he had. He was alive and well. To be standing in this place after all these years was a victory. One almost enough to bring a tear to his eye. Unfortunately, that nostalgia would have to wait. Because he had company. Halt! A stern voice barked, intruding on his thoughts. Identify yourself. You reacted quickly. Good. Naruto didn't even bother to risk a glance over the shoulder. He recognized the blue and white uniforms. They came out of nowhere, dropping down from the rooftops, appearing from the alleyways, rising from the streets. Remarkable response time, he mused. Earthbenders, waterbenders, even firebenders. It seemed that the organization had branched out significantly since he'd left this mortal coil. Despite that fact, they were still known to him, members of the White Lotus. Looks like Iroha's little club had come far since he'd seen them last. Now there was another dear friend he missed. Aang, Sokka, Mai Appa, Momo, Ty Lee, Jean, and Zuko. So many of them were gone now and there was nothing he could do about it. Well, short of an Edo Tensei Rinna Tensei combination, but he wasn't so desperate as to sacrifice innocent lives just to bring back his comrades. They'd been dead for a long time. Who was he to go stirring up old ghosts? Some of which had died helping him fight that horrible menace, yet the chance to see them again, no. They deserved their rest. He would dwell on their loss later. A response was called for. You might want to lower those arms, gentlemen. The words were light, almost airy as his gaze roamed the semicircle of men and women surrounding him. I said, identify yourself. Came the command a second time. Blue eyes darkened. I am the great guardian of the gate. He recited calmly and quietly, recalling the words by which they had been meant to recognize them. One who has eaten the fruit and tasted its mysteries. But if you don't believe me, behold. In a single breath he exhaled and dropped Sage Mode. Serene saffron eyes flashed into violent violet, the rimmed orbs narrow and intense, shimmering with untold energy. Growling he took it further, his body stepping out of itself, skin shimmering in eerie onyx as he ascended into the towering terror that was his avatar state. Now do you recognize me? 6 arms folded before his now chiseled chest, a cloud of steam wafting up and out between his clenched teeth. Do you know who I am? As one, the members of the White Lotus drew back in awe and fear. The whole world knew this form. He'd used this savage state to destroy mountains, reshape entire continents to his will. Islands had been born out of this creature's power, fertile paradises for the refugees of the 100-Year War. Only a fool wouldn't recognize this form. But something was wrong. He could feel that thing, trying to worm its way up again, trying to seize control of his body. Stubbornly, he quashed it and shoved it back down, pressing and folding it into the deepest, darkest corner of his mind. But the words lingered, mocking him. You cannot stop me forever. You only delay the inevitable. Not if I have anything to say about it, you piece of. The avatar of the gods, one of them their captain, mayhaps? A man with dark hair and a darker beard breathed out in a rush, earning his attention once more. Impossible. The rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. With a grunt, Naruto released his hold on the power, resuming human shape and form once more. Do you require another demonstration? Stand down. The captain barked out. I said stand down, the lot of you. Now. You're in the presence of a god, men. The hero of the Earth Kingdom. Savior of the Water Tribe. Back from the dead. At the last word the man took a knee and averted his eyes. Like a flowing river the rest of the White Lotus followed on bended knee, each bowing before him. And it didn't stop there. Dozens of others were suddenly genuflecting before him in the streets, others looking at him with open admiration. It was a humbling sight, all things considered, a reminder of the power that he once wielded. Still wielded. We are honored to have you with us again, sir, the captain said, rising. After the great crisis, we feared you might be lost forever. At ease, Captain? It was all too easy to slip back into the authority he'd once possessed a lifetime ago. I'm not here to fight a great evil this time, just to visit an old friend. Of course, sir, don't call me that. He dismissed him with a wave of the hand. It makes me feel old. Naruto will do just fine. And you are? Ching, sir. His face dimpled in a slight frown. Well then, Ching, would you kindly point me in the direction of Katara's house? I'm afraid I'm not exactly dressed for this weather. Right away, Avatar. Another twitch. Gah, stop calling me that, Databeo. Ching and his men proved honest to a fault, unerringly guiding him to her home. It was with some trepidation that Naruto sent them back to their posts. He wasn't certain how Katara might react to his sudden return. A waterbender of her caliber could do some serious damage if she was so inclined. What would she say? Did she age? What would she be like? Had his chakra blessed her with the gift of longevity? So many questions, not enough answer. But he'd stalled long enough. Steeling himself, he stepped forward. With one hand, he peeled back the door. There she was. Her back was turned, but she started at the sound, spinning to face him. Time stopped. Words flowed from his mouth without thought. Hello, Katara. He somehow managed to smile. It's been a long time. You've certainly aged well. His voice broke on the last word, emotion finally overcoming him. His heart bounced on rocks, jagged and gray. It was her, really, truly her. Older, hunched and worn with age, but still there. Naruto. By the gods, it felt like his heart was about to explode out of his chest. Is that really you? Hey, he had to give her credit. For a woman of her age, Katara moved like water. 1 minute she'd been standing across from him. The next, he was in her arms. You're alive. Yes, and you're crushing me. Oh, sorry. Tears stung at his eyes as she let him go, threatening to overwhelm him completely as he gazed upon her. He'd always regretted not marrying her when he'd had the chance, as he'd done so with the others. But the great crisis had arrived so suddenly. There was simply no time to dwell on anything but the new enemies that threatened to destroy everything. It had always been later. Once they had won. But then he'd sacrificed himself to ensure peace, not wanting to risk the possibility that his foe might return in a different form centuries down the road. While, looking back, he could see why Katara and Aang had gotten together after his death. The little arrowhead always had a crush on her, and with him gone, no. He wouldn't begrudge Katara for the decision that she'd made. He had no claim on her. Maybe if he'd been a little less concerned with saving the world, he might not be standing here now. They might have been happy, they might have had a real chance for a family. But that was over and done. Gone. Past him. Time to move on. His heart lurched at the thought. I guess we've got a lot to talk about, Some time later, what in the dash? Lin Beifong nearly jumped out of her skin and clear off the airship itself, as her father flashed into existence only inches before her face. Her first instinct was to punch his lights out, but one look at his damp eyes stayed her hand. They were red, she realized suddenly. He'd been crying. Naruto never cried. Even during the 100-Year War he'd been known for his stoicism and strange sense of humor. If something got in his way he was apt to just laugh and run it down. In the short time that she'd known him, she'd never see her dad shed a tear. Wow, it was strange thinking of him like that. Wherever he'd been, something had clearly shaken him up. Not that I cared, Lin told herself. She'd been en route to the city bridge to apprehend an airbender who had climbed up there and refused to come down. The absolute last thing she'd expected or wanted was for her erstwhile father to pop in at the last minute. It was only made worse by the fond memories she had of him. What gave him the right to go and die like that? It had ruined their family, made Suin rebellious, hardened her mother's heart, and left her alone. One day he'd been there, telling her how incredibly proud he was of her, then he was gone. With this in mind, she could not quite keep the bitterness out of her voice. "And where have you been?" she challenged, catching up with an old friend. The back of a hand was raised to scrub at his eyes. "Katara," he continued at her questing stare. "I had a feeling she'd moved on after my death even though Aang was gone. Seems I was right. Still aches like an old wound though." His lips quirked down in a frown, pinching in sorrow. "If I'd know it would be like this I. In that instant he looked profoundly old, sad beyond his years. Vulnerable. For a man who could reshape an entire continent with sheer strength alone, it was a shocking turn of events. Despite all the bitter feelings she had toward her father, Lin faltered. She'd had fond memories of him, vague though they were. Those memories did not match with the miserable blonde standing before her. He looked as though he just had the life sucked out of him. Dead inside. And was that a tear she saw in his eye? "Are you crying?" Not," he muttered, stifling a sob, shaking his head savagely from side to side. "This is just a lot to take in. I knew things must have changed when I woke up again, but seeing all of it firsthand, I just don't know." His gaze turned to the viewport, where even now the bridge to Republic City could be seen looming in the distance. "Time's marched on without me." Stepping forwards, he laid a hand on the glass, fingers splaying against the pane of the window. "I thought I'd accepted that long ago, before all this started. But it's different, experiencing this all over again. It was better when I didn't have any bonds. Back then I wouldn't feel any pain." "How can you say that?" Naruto jerked around, staring at her. "Because it's true. I mean, look at you. You tried to knock my block off. I seriously doubt that the rest of my family will be as enthused to see me. I mean, I can't even tell Kia she's my kid. I only clobbered you because you surprised me," she sputtered. "And wait, what? Ah, crap." Her father turned away, swearing softly to himself. "Just forget you heard that. Please, all right." That was one can of worms she didn't want to open. "It still doesn't change the fact that you're being overly pessimistic about this. I'm sure the rest of your children will be more than happy to see you." She made no mention of Suin. That would set him off like a chattering hog monkey, especially once he discovered their past. "Oh?" he challenged, stepping to her. "Prove me wrong." "I only met Chanwan once," Lin admitted, fighting the urge not to quail under those blazing blue orbs. "She's the spitting image of her mother, Azula, right down to the attitude." As for Gao, she beeped her head aside, considering, unable to keep the slight smile from her eyes at the way he was staring at her now, rapt with attention. "Let's just say he takes after his father. Suki hasn't left New Kyoshi in over a decade, so I really can't claim to know much about her. But, beg your pardon? I had 4 kids with her," Naruto muttered, sounding whimsical. "A son, then, triplets, I think." Man, was she mad. "You mean you haven't met them yet?" Mission accomplished. His mind was decidedly elsewhere, even if that hadn't been her intention. The avatar of change shook his head. "I would have paid a visit to Azula and Suki too, but it seems I can't go that far yet." Well, that made sense, Lin thought to herself. The infamous Hashirama. The technique that made him the bane of crime and any fool who dared to threaten the peace. Supposedly he could travel around the world or anywhere with it, so long as he had a symbol through to travel, yet it appeared that, for now, He was still recovering his strength. But how had he appeared before her earlier? As if reading that very thought, he smiled sadly. Lin frowned. How did you? I marked you the day you were born, silly girl. Your sister, too. He pressed on through her scowl. Anyone imprinted with my jutsu bears it until I no longer deem it necessary. Though your mother must have found her own way, because I can't track her with it anymore. Then there's the whole matter of the new bending school I developed. It's a funny thing when you can bend a few seconds or a minute. I can make something last forever if I see fit. Unless someone knows how to break it. What are you talking about? Time bending, of course. He made a sweeping movement with his hands, the air shimmering softly at his touch. It's where you take a moment in time and make it your own. Stretching it out, or reducing it to the blink of an eye. But when you push or pull on time, it does the same to you. If I wasn't cursed with this immortal body, I'd probably have been destroyed the first time I discovered it. In theory, I'm the only one who can do it without erasing myself from existence, but even then, I only use it in dire situations. Existing outside the flow of time is a very dangerous thing, after all. Wait, you mean your mother never told you? She might have left that one out. Toph had drawn inward after his death, and that was before her apocalyptic fight and near arrest of Suing. Since she'd set out to travel the world in search of enlightenment, Lin hadn't heard from her mother. Naruto's casual admittance that even he couldn't find either meant that she wanted to be left alone, or, no. She didn't want to think of that. Estranged from her family though she might be, the idea of her mother's death was too painful to think of. No. Lin refused to even consider it. Her mother was too stubborn to die. She was probably. Try to hit me then. He offered suddenly. What? No. I'm not going to hit you. So much for that bonding moment. Naruto was smiling now, looking almost giddy by comparison. Oh? You seemed pretty keen on it before. A muscle jumped in Lin's jaw. Do you want me to knock you out again? Trust me, you won't. Okay, that does it. Like lightning, she struck. Naruto moved. There was no flash of yellow to signify his passing. The Hiraishin would have just pulled him to her. Instead, he made a gentle motion as though he were pulling on the air itself. A punch that should have taken little more than an instant to strike him was inexplicably delayed, somehow. It felt as though she were moving through a thick mire, all her reactions slowed to a crawl. But whatever was slowing her had no effect upon Naruto, because the blonde simply reached out and pushed 2 fingers down into her fist, upsetting her balance. Even as Lin realized this, his leg swung out, sweeping her off her feet and onto the floor, and time marched ever onward. Well? He crowed proudly. Don't say that I didn't warn you. Lin gawped up at him. In the span of a single heart he'd both defeated and disabled her. Naruto barked out a laugh. When he offered her a hand, she glowered at him until he lowered it. Stubbornly she climbed back to her feet on her own, dusting herself off with a hand. Then she realized he was staring at her. What? You really are just like your mother, he mused. Always wanting to do everything yourself. When she first found out she was pregnant with you, she punched me so hard. Nearly broke my damn arm. Now that, Lin could imagine. Toph's temper had been the stuff of legend. But once more, her father proved he was full of surprises. His eyes softened, shining with fatherly pride. No one was near enough to hear the words, but they rang all too clearly in her ears regardless. But you know, he continued, when she held you in her arms that day, I'd never seen her that happy before in all her life. Even with me and the rest of the gang. We decided on your name together, because you were exactly that to us. Our gem. Our life. Our everything. I wish I could have been there for you more than I was. Lin snorted and averted her gaze, turning her back on him. Well, at least you were there for something. That's not fair, Lin. If he was at all offended by the renewed vitriol in her tone, his voice little to show it. I had a duty to the world, responsibility. Oh yes, I'm sure you did. You had a responsibility. The strings of Lin's emotions, already stretched so tight, chose that moment to snap. She swung around violent, tears flying from her eyes at the abrupt motion. The shock in his own was all too real, and for a moment she felt a sick sense of satisfaction. And it shamed her. Then came the anger. It burned through her in a searing wave, cleansing all other emotions, burning everything else away. How could he? How dare he? To your family. To us. To me. He cringed slightly at her shout. Who gave you permission to go and disappear like that? To sacrifice yourself? He didn't shout at her. If anything, he looked sad. Is that what this is about? Me leaving? Yes. No. She jerked away from his touch when he tried to console her. Leave me alone. I've already done that to you once, Lin. I'm not going to do it again. Never again. When he took hold of her shoulders and pulled her into his arms, it took everything she had not to metal bend at him. She didn't like physical contact. Never had. Being held by her long-lost parent only made things worse. Her lower lip quivered slightly as he drew her head into his chest. Despite being physically older than him, he still had a good 5 inches on her after all these years. He hadn't hugged her since she was a little girl. It was humbling. I know I wasn't around to see you and your sister grow up, but for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Her heart wrenched. You're lying. Why would I lie? He stepped back, holding her at arm's length. What could I possibly hope to gain from it? I don't know. Let me show you how to fight then, he offered. We've got a few minutes until we reach the bridge. It'll give us time to talk. I know how to fight. Lin protested, but the words were without rancor. I don't need you to teach me anything. And I can defend myself. Not without your bending, you can't. Besides, I wasn't expecting that first hit. You clobbered me when I wasn't ready for it. Come here, let me teach you how to punch properly. No, really, your timing's all off. No, wait, ow. Hey, that hurt, ow. Stop hitting me, I'm not ready yet. Ow. It was a substantially bruised Naruto that Korra found awaiting her on the bridge when she landed a few minutes later. He looked as though he'd had the beating of a lifetime, something that stood in stark contrast to the silly smile wreathing half his visage. Beifong stood only a few feet away, her eyes glued onto his back. It didn't take 2 brain cells to realize that the two had finally exchanged words and quite possibly a few of their fists since she'd seen them last. Even so, she couldn't help but ask the age-old question, what happened to you? Nothing. Despite those words, Naruto seemed different somehow. Happy even? Just a little family reunion, that's all. It'll heal. As if provoked by those very words, the bruised and yellowed skin receded, replaced by healthy tanned flesh once more. Unbidden, his eyes drifted up to the bridge where the elusive airbender was hiding. I'd get up there and rescue him, were I you. It'd be a shame if he fell. The crow behind him seemed to share his opinion, if their hushed murmurs were of any indication. Oh, right, don't worry, he reassured as she took flight. I'll be here when you get back. You probably have a lot of questions. When Korra finally landed with Daw some time later, it was to a scene changed. Not only had the crowd grown, but Tenzin had apparently arrived since she'd started to talk the new bender down, and he seemed to be subsumed in an animated conversation with the avatar of change. A rare smile lit the airbender's face, and if one knew Aang's son, they also knew that those smiles were few and far between. He was admittedly stoic and stern most of the time, and as she drew closer with the frazzled man in tow, she caught the tail end of their conversation. Amazed you know so much about our culture, Tenzin finished. Naruto shrugged. I've had a few years to learn. You'd be amazed what you can learn if you just listen. So is this the deal? Her eyes shifted, just in time to catch President Reiko push back the police barrier, then storm across the tarmac. We have crisis every other day now thanks to you. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Naruto step toward the president. She waved him down. I'm sorry, but the vines are here to stay. You're just going to have to get used to it. Well, you know who's not here to stay? You. I order you to leave this city. You've caused nothing but trouble since York. Korra never saw the force that toppled Reiko. One moment he was standing there ranting and raving. The next something grabbed him and tossed him off the bridge, sending him arcing over the steel cables and into the waiting waters below. A thunderous splash resounded in their ears a minute later, signaling that he'd finally finished his fall. There was a silence. All eyes swiveled to Naruto. The blonde blinked, the Rinnegan fading from his vision. What? He shrugged. Now he's in the drink with his ratings. Would you rather I killed him? Everyone shook their heads. Korra couldn't help it. She laughed. I can see my path now. There are new airbenders out there, and I'm gonna find them and rebuild the Air Nation. Don't think I'm not going with you. Tenzin smiled. It's so exciting. Who knows who might be out there now, discovering the joy of airbending for the first time. Road trip, huh? Naruto grinned. Sounds fun. Then his smile turned sly. I'm sure Lin wouldn't mind joining us. Now wait just a minute. Us? Korra blinked. I'm coming with you, of course, he replied, ignoring her protest completely. I'd like to see how the world has changed. A road trip. In the beginning, Korra found the idea thrilling. Naruto was an amicable traveler and an even better bender. In the first few days of their journey, she learned more about him both as an avatar and a person, listened at night with Asami and the others as he recounted tales of the greatest battles during the 100-Year War and his most chilling losses, culminating his penultimate sacrifice for the sake of their world. She began to feel more than just sympathy for him, this sad stranger who'd found himself thrust into a future he didn't want. In time, she found herself coming to genuinely enjoy his presence, and relish the pranks he played on the oft unsuspecting crew. Then they met Kyon, a simple farmer who, in spite of their prodding and Naruto's quiet suggestion that his family accompany him, wanted nothing to do with becoming an air nomad. After that, their little road trip snowballed into a complete and unequivocal disaster. Despite her and Tenzin's best efforts, they were only able to recruit 2 benders by the time they reached Ba Sing Se. Their first volunteer, a well-dressed young woman known as Fang Hua, only deigned to join them because Naruto finally opted to make use of his charms and persuade her to join their cause. Else she surely would have turned away once Tenzin started mentioning the whole ancient airbender robes. It seemed this title of his as Avatar of the Gods still had some sway in the world. Korra soon found herself wishing she hadn't joined them, however. The girl was insufferable to the point of arrogance, refusing to be trained by anyone other than the immortal Avatar himself. It certainly didn't help that she was perhaps one of the most dazzling beauties Korra had ever seen, with her fine features, silken voice, and dark hair. Ordinarily that wouldn't have been a problem for Korra. But the way she constantly clung to Naruto's arm, something about that, bothered the young Avatar. She didn't like it. At all. Fan Hua never spoke a singed word of disrespect. In terms of skill, she was a natural, rejoicing in her new gift, so long as it didn't mess up her hair. The second was an ex-thief named Kai, little more than a child Janora's age. He'd be in jail right now if they hadn't intervened. Yeah, not the best track record. But when they reached Ba Sing Se, all hell broke loose. Meanwhile, in the Fire Nation, a pair of golden eyes stared down at the ruined remains of the cage, sundered and torn. Suspended over a pit of molten lava, it had once housed a dangerous criminal. She was a powerful waterbender. In such an arid environment, with no water to bend, that assumed she was no longer a threat. Alone, she certainly wasn't. But then again, none could have anticipated a break. They came out of nowhere. A member of the White Lotus knelt before her, prostrating himself at her mercy. I'm so sorry, Lord Azula. The Fire Lord in question stifled a sigh as she ran a finely manicured hand through her long, ebon hair. It was so hard to find good help these days, she thought to herself. The years had been quite kind to her. She had lived in peace with her many children and grandchildren as age slowly crept up upon her, all the while her body remaining fit and firm. She supposed she had her husband to thank for that. She might be old, but thanks to a few throbbing chakra infusions, she retained all the grace and beauty of a woman in her mid-20s. Thanks to that, her skills had sharpened significantly over the decades, honed to a razor's edge. If what she'd just been told was true, she'd be needing every ounce of them. I'm disappointed in you, Commander. She frowned at the warden. How could you let this happen? That caught us by surprise. The man blathered. And? Do get on with it. Zahir is an airbender now. Azula arched a delicate eyebrow. Oh? And do you, perchance, have any idea the power these criminals possess? Individually, they could take down almost any bender. Put them all together and they could take down the entire world. The world my husband sacrificed himself to build all those years ago. Those molten orbs blazed with a cold, azure fire blacker than the pits of hell itself. And now you mean to tell me that their leader, a man I personally defeated, is an airbender? She said, voice vibrating with controlled anger. The poor fool was quivering now, fearful for his very life. Good, we can track them, don't? She replied harshly, turning and striding toward the landing platform, leaving him to fumble after in her footsteps. I know exactly where they're going. Notify the new chiefs of the Northern Water Tribe that an attack on their prison is imminent. As they strode outward, the light revealed the impossible to his eyes. A great blue beast awaited them, perched regally upon the pad. A dragon. Its long neck rose, craning upward as its mistress approached. And send word to New Kyoshi. I'll require some of Suki's best to deal with this catastrophe. Hopefully your mistake hasn't endangered the world. Where are you going? He asked as she climbed onto the beast's back. Isn't it obvious? Azula pinioned him with a fierce stare as she took hold of the reins. I'm going to correct my mistake. With a defiant shout, her mount took flight. Miles away, nearing Ba Sing Se, their airship rose through the sky like a great metal beast, its prow piercing the clouds with ease. Below it the earth lay in silent supplication, rivers and forests and plains stretching as far as the eye could see. Naruto waited anxiously from his perch on the railing, his blue eyes eagerly awaiting the first sign of civilization. He was anxious to reach Ba Sing Se, to see how the city had changed over the years. But for now, his attention remained firmly fixated on the spectacle below. Gah! Fan Hua yelped as Kai bowled her over with a swift sweep to the legs, the blows sending her sprawling out across the deck. Why, you little... Ha! The boy crowed proudly. You really need to work on your stance. Genora sighed. Stay light on your feet. Naruto called down to her. Don't stay in any one place for too long. Remember what happened to Bumi. Hey! Muttering crossly to herself, the brunette clambered to her feet. I'll get you yet. Bring it on, Madam Fussy Britches. Oh, that does it. It's so exciting to be on a diplomatic mission to Ba Sing Se. Korra grinned as their airbending match resumed. What's the Earth Queen like? Tenzin made a face. I've never met her, but I've heard she's very demanding. Hey, she can't be that bad. Naruto sighed wistfully as he gazed down at the clouds. I helped put her on the throne a long time ago before my death. She's probably wondering what I'm doing here. Before he could try to finish that sentence, Bo Lin bum rushed the balcony. Words rushed from his mouth, syllables blurring together. The Sisat Mako Wimadai Thisiswera Dajru up Mir look. Okay, calm down, I'm looking. Mako humored him with a smile. Naruto couldn't help but laugh at that. You have family here too, maybe? The elder of the siblings answered with a shrug. This is where our dad grew up. I see. Naruto nodded, though his attention remained fixated firmly elsewhere. He had fond memories of this place, after he'd ousted Long Fong and made so much needed changes. He'd stepped into a city that walled off the poor as though they were a disease, something to be ignored and nothing more. They'd been quarreled and segregated in the lower ring like animals. No, even animals were treated better than this. When he'd departed this city to meet with Aang in the North Pole, the city had been changing. There was a real chance of stamping out the corruption and poverty that plagued most of the city. When he'd come back during the Great Crisis, the rings were being lowered. Ba Sing Se still retained its infamous wall to keep intruders out, but within it was changing. He'd forced the Earth King to step down once his term was over, and the walls were removed, and since June had been all too willing to take his place, he'd named her the new queen. Who knew what manner of changes she might have made? Hopefully good ones. Then Korra groaned. Ugh, the lower ring smells terrible. Wait, what? His gaze jerked down and around, his eyes nearly watering at the foul stench that greeted them. Blue eyes narrowed at the piss-poor conditions, the poverty, ramshackle homes, and by the log, what an odor! With his superior senses it was nearly enough to knock him flat on his ass. No. It shouldn't be like this. But it was. Bo Lin blanched. No wonder Dad left. That shouldn't be possible. Incredulity strained his voice. What, do you not smell the stench? Bo Lin asked of him. Yes, I smell it. What's wrong, Sifu? Fan Hua asked, sidling up beside him. Is the city not to your liking? No, you don't understand. Confusion clashed with anger in his mind, warring in a myriad of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him completely. The lower ring shouldn't be there. I destroyed it myself. I made it all one city. Eradicated poverty. It shouldn't be like this. Asami frowned as she too peered over the railing. What do you mean? It's been like this for as long as I can remember. Did you do something? To her dismay, Naruto clicked his jaw shut with an audible pop, refusing to answer that innocent question. Wait. What did I say? He was decidedly silent after that, not speaking until they finally made it to the upper ring. Upon their arrival they were promptly greeted by a servile little man in long, flowing robes. He was, Korra thought, decidedly meek. Avatar Korra, Master Tenzin, it is my greatest pleasure to welcome you and your party to the upper ring of Ba Sing Se. I am Grand Secretariat Gon. His words trailed off as he saw Naruto storm down the ramp, eyes alight with something that could only loosely be described as anger in Korra's mind. Avatar Naruto? The little man gulped, quivering at the sight of the man who had once brought the walled city to its knees. I was unaware that you had returned, my Lord Gurk. Whatever else he might have said died as the man's hand latched onto his throat and pulled him forward until he was towering over the smaller man. You will take me to see your queen. His voice barely rose above a growl. Now, why yes sir, right away sir, go. With a flick of the wrist he flung Gon away, leaving him to scramble on ahead as though the hounds of hell were at his heels. Without so much as a backwards glance, the avatar of change took off after him. That set Korra to following him, leaving the others to trail in her wake. What the heck are you doing? She shouted at his back. Naruto kept walking, cresting a bridge over a koi pond with deceptive speed. Naruto! Hey! I'm talking to you, he rounded on her with a hiss. What? What's got into you? All I know is that I asked the Earth King to step down during the Great Crisis and let June take his place. Simple, under the radar, quick and clean. He swore on his ancestors' honor that he would. Now I'm hearing and seeing that everything she and I worked towards has been all but destroyed. June herself is nowhere to be seen, and the city is exactly as it was when I first visited. I'm hoping Her Majesty can help me fill in the leap in logic between these two events. Korra gulped, sarcasm. Boy, was he furious. Naruto was never sarcastic if he could help it. He usually said what he meant and had little patience for time wasting. Then again, she doubted anyone else had contravened his orders as spectacularly as this queen must have done. Are you sure? I've never been more certain about anything in my life. Without another word he spun on his heel and kept walking. And then, without any warning whatsoever, he stopped. Korra very nearly smacked into him, and was prepared to tell him as much when he flung up a hand for silence. I can hear them screaming. His eyes were screwed shut, ears pricking, as though they were straining to hear. What are you, people? He clarified, eyes dusting with orange as he called upon the powers of Sage Mode. Under the temple. Airbendis. With that eerie warning still ringing in her ears, he began to advance once more. She was in for another surprise as they reached the veranda. A pair of men stood guard before the queens turned back, their dark flowing robes and brimmed hats immediately identifying them as Dai Li agents. What shocked her was thus. No sooner had the blonde approached than the Dai Li bowed to him. Not her. Him. My Lord Avatar, one of them began, we are honored to see your return. Wait, you know him? Our fathers and grandfathers served him before the Great Crisis. The second answered. The Queen may rule Ba Sing Se, but we remain loyal to you, Naruto, sir. Rise. Naruto snapped. What can you tell me about the secret complex under your temple? The two men exchanged a glance, as though weighing their options and loyalties. As one, they turned. The Queen is training an airbending army for her personal protection, sir. Korra started at the simple admission, not because they'd turned on their queen, but the sheer incredulity of it threatened to boggle the mind. Naruto's expression, once so stormy, was now calm as a lake. The sudden reversal worried her, as did that slow smile spreading across his visage. One last question. Your queen. What is her name? Her name is Hoting, sir. Pain flashed across his face. Not June. No, sir. His eyes gleamed. I see. Mako, silent until this very moment, suddenly frowned. Hey, has anyone seen Fang Hua and Kai? Korra turned, half expecting to find the pair standing right behind them. Of either, there was no sign whatsoever. Stranger still, there was no sign of Naruto himself now. The blonde had completely vanished of him, there was not even a plume of smoke to be seen. Asami offered a mute shrug. Naruto, do you want us to look for him? We'd have better luck catching a greased hog monkey. Mako muttered. Forget him, let's go find that little thief. And Fang Hua? His brother asked, eyes shining. Yes, Bolin, her too. Korra wouldn't see either of them or Naruto again for 2 days. Hoting scowled. She didn't understand why she'd been summoned here in the middle of the night. Ordinarily no one had the right to summon her, but her secretary had been unusually adamant. So she dolled herself up, caked on all manner of makeup, and gone to her throne room. Imagine her surprise when she found that none of her guards or soldiers were present. A lone individual awaited her, his back stopped, head hidden in a dark cowl. She silently decided to exile him for demanding an audience this late. But not before she humiliated him. What do you want, peasant? she sighed, seating herself on her throne. This had better be worth my time. Please, my lady, he began in the thin, reedy voice of an old man. It's wife. She lives in the lower ring and she's very sick. If you just spare a bit of medicine. Denied. There was a silence. That was your last chance. The voice was suddenly stronger, harsher, cracking with anger. Your guards were right. You really are an insufferable bitch. With that word the stranger seemed to grow a foot in height. A cowl was torn aside, exposing a visage out of her blackest nightmare, eyes shining an eerie purple. It was him. Him. She tried to rise, tried to flee, but someone earthbent the exits shut, trapping her in the room. That was the least of her worries. Quivering, she sank back into her seat, failing to avoid those furious eyes boring into her head. They seemed to peer through her very soul, and find her wanting. Do you know who I am? The man asked. But you're dead? He beeped his head aside, frowning. I get that a lot. Why are you here? Simple. Naruto cracked his knuckles menacingly. Have found you guilty of high treason. The penalty is death. Any last words? The Earth Queen blanched, her face turning ashen behind layer upon layer of thick makeup. But why? Her words echoed in the dead of the night, bouncing off the empty walls of her palace. Where were her guards? Where were the daily? For every second she asked herself these questions, her heart hammered, threatening to lurch itself up and out of her throat if something wasn't done to calm her nerves. She rang at the bell, but no one came. There was only silence. Because I am the avatar of change, he chimed. And it is my place to ensure peace and balance. But perhaps a reminder is needed. Scowling, he started forward. You made this personal. Don't bother calling for the daily. They follow me now. So do your guards. I suspect they've grown rather tired of pandering to a little witch like yourself. What are you talking about? Naruto chuckled into a hand, his eyes shining eerily through the cracks of his fingers. A long time ago I left this city in the hands of an old friend. And you've corrupted it. With each step taken towards her, the woman shrank away, cringing before the blazing eyes. When I left, Boss Singh say she was more than beautiful. The daily served me, and the king. The city was being restored. Poverty was nearly eradicated. But you've ruined it. You levy heavy taxes for your vanity projects. Step. Burden your citizens with poverty while you live in luxury. Step. You make ridiculous demands, all in the name of your so-called kingdom and throne and honor, none of which belong to you in the first place. You stole them. This is my city and they are my. Clenched knuckles barreled into her unsuspecting visage with all the force of a freight train. The blow toppled the queen from her throne, sending her corpulent form sprawling down the steps of her throne. Naruto held his hand aloft a moment longer. Then, with great dignity, he sat himself in her chair. Don't worry, I'll be sure to put a far more humble soul on this seat once I've dealt with you. Perhaps that poor little man you seem so keen on pushing around? But I digress. His brief moment of indulgence over, he rose from the throne and started down the steps after her. I came to this city expecting to see my changes taken root. But you've uprooted them. Built the walls back up, filled them with weeds. Her Majesty was gibbering now, trying to curl herself into as small a ball as possible, as though she might somehow escape the piercing gaze of the predator approaching her. But she could not. To blink was to draw his attention, to breathe was to set him on the hunt. All she could do was quiver as she soiled herself. And just when I think you could do no worse, you decide it's a fine idea to kidnap your own citizens and train yourself a secret airbending army. With one final movement, he crouched until he was face to face with her, those eerie purple orbs leering down upon her tearful visage. Tell me, my dear Queen Bee, when did this seem like a good idea? I entrusted your father with this city, and when he passed, he was to hand it down to my dear June and her daughters, thereby ending his line of succession. Imagine my surprise to return almost a century later and find that this is not so. Now, I know your father would never betray me. So it stands to reason that you did. You did away with them, or at the very least drove her from what was rightfully hers. I am very disappointed by that. Even so, I might have let you live, if you hadn't kidnapped my students, and attempted to induct them into your little army. And that, my dear Bee, is unforgivable. Please, mercy. Mercy? Sobs fled her throat as he reached down and seized her by the throat, breath coming in furious, strangled yelps. The Avatar scowled, eyes burning black. You do all this and ask for mercy? Did you not think that I would return? Did you not think I would learn of your treachery? Abruptly his facade of calm shattered, giving light to the apocalyptic anger simmering beneath. You filthy bitch, slap. The next backhand was sharp and brutal, shattering her nose of bone and sinew, bruising her angular face. Still, she gibbered on. You cannot do this. This is murder. There will be war. His grin turned ghastly. A Rasengan swirled in his hand, growing larger and larger with each passing instant. It's not murder if no one finds out. No! She screamed. No! You can't do this to me. You can't. The jutsu-clad hand cut down mercilessly, boring through her stomach like a drill. Blood spattered everywhere, coating the throne, staining his unflinching visage. Coldly, callously, the avatar of the gods ripped his hand from her chest and allowed her to slump down onto the steps. It would not be a swift death. And then, to add insult to injury, he chose to kneel before her. Lips like ice brushed her outer earlobe, causing her to shudder and gasp out of sheer terror. I just did. He whispered into her ear. Rising, he waited until she expired, standing patiently with AR. A snap of his fingers summoned the Daily to his side. They seemed to come from everywhere at once, emerging from the shadows, the ceiling, even the floor itself. He really admired their precision. They'd been waiting in the wings all this time, watching as he dispensed swift justice upon their queen. And they hadn't batted an eyelash at it. Arms at their backs they assembled before him, ramrods straight they formed rows, awaiting Inohai's orders. Silent soldiers, his to command. A tiny smile touched his visage. Sir? One of them asked. Is it done? Yes, my lord. A deep bow, low and humble in its humility. We've freed the airbenders, and brought them to the airship as instructed. Your students were among them. Additionally, those of the Daily not loyal to you have been placed into custody. Furthermore, we are scouring the city for Lady June and her children as we speak. If she's here, we'll find her, sir. Good. Execute the Daily in custody and bury them. I don't want word of this getting out until I'm prepared to deal with the political blowback, sir. And one more thing. Unbidden, his gaze strayed to the queen's cooling corpse. A swift stomp of his foot reduced her head to a pulpy mess. Clean up this mess. You did what? I already told you. Naruto replied nonchalantly to Tenzin's barely controlled shout, casually crossing a leg atop the queen's throne the next morning. I merely found your hidden airbenders, killed that stupid bitch of a queen, assumed direct control over the Daily, and in a few hours I plan on putting a new ruler on this throne. If all goes well, we can be out of here before nightfall. It's nothing to balk at. At their disbelieving stares he only smiled, lounging back into his new seat with an air of authority that, Korra thought, was a touch too regal for her liking. So too were the three Daily flanking him on either side. There was no sign of the murder he'd committed, but his casual admittance of the fact still rocked her to the core. He'd woken them bright and early, presenting to them a large group of airbenders. In all likelihood that was probably the highlight of the morning. Once he'd called them into the throne room, things had swiftly snowballed. He'd insisted Kai and Genora remain outside. As it turned out, surprise was twofold. In addition to the rescued airbenders, he'd apparently seized control of the city overnight. And killed the Earth Queen. I say she had it coming. Fang Hua sniffed, her eyes narrowing crossly. I belong to no one, least of all that hag. Asami looked visibly ill at the mention of the queen. Then, those screams I heard last night, that was her? Do you mourn her death? Naruto asked pointedly. What? No. It's just, she turned aside. I can't believe you'd do something like that. It wasn't my first option, believe me, Lin groaned, placing her face in one hand. Father, hey! You finally called me Dad-ow. The avatar yelped as she walloped him on the back of the head with a boulder. Okay, baby steps, baby steps. I can't believe you assassinated the Earth Queen. Clearly flustered beyond the point of pacification, Tenzin wasn't willing to let the matter drop. What made you think you could do this? Naruto stopped smiling. This countenance of his darkened instead. Beside him, the agents made the slightest of shifts, earthen hands shuffling slightly within their sleeves. A gesture from their leader bade them be still. Master Tenzin, he continued quietly, directing his words to the livid airbender, I ask for your understanding in this matter. I know that you favor a peaceful resolution to matters such as these, but please try to see it from my perspective. Were I to imprison her, there would be no guarantee she wouldn't surely escape and try to seize power again. I tried to persuade her, but she failed to see reason. Would you rather I left her to her wicked ways, allowed her to continue the oppression of her people? The silence in and of itself was telling. Please, your father accepted the need for a heavy hand when words failed. Don't you bring my father into this. The blonde beeped his head aside, contemplating. My apologies, he said at last. That was uncalled for. But you cannot name me the villain in this. I only have the best interests at heart for this city, and as I said, my stewardship of the throne is only temporary. Once I find the rightful queen, I fully intend to step down. With that, Korra finally found it in her to speak up. What do you mean, find? I don't know where she is right now, Naruto admitted sheepishly. The daily are currently scouring the city for her, in addition to redistributing the wrongfully collected tax money. There was a collective silence after that. All right, Tenzin sighed, tugging stressfully at his beard. I'm just going to pretend this conversation didn't happen, all right? I admit, I had little love for that woman, but at least we have the airbenders. We'll just have to agree to disagree on your methods. Agreed. In a fluid motion, Naruto rose from the throne. Now, how about breakfast? Finally, fresh food? Bolin exclaimed. Mako groaned. About time. All eyes turned on the brothers. What? They had a lot of rotten fruit in the lower ring. And most of our family, too. Everyone face vaulted. The group swiftly dissolved after that remark, everyone trickling out of the room one by one in search of rest, sustenance, or some other activity in which to indulge themselves. Korra lingered. She waited until everyone but her and Naruto had left the antechamber, then she pounced. To his credit, the blonde managed all of half a turn before she grabbed him. Inexplicably, he found both of their arms linked, her elbow brushing up against his ribs, as she led him away from their quarters and down a different path. What are you dash? Blue eyes bored into his. Can we talk? Naruto pinched his nose and sighed. Finally, he nodded. Walk with me, she complied. Leading her to a nearby bridge overlooking a koi pond, he laid his arms upon the rail. Korra released him, her shoulder brushing up against him as she took up position beside. For a long, arduous moment, they simply stood there in relative silence, contemplating the fish swimming below. What do you want me to say? He asked at last. If it's an apology you're looking for, you might be disappointed. The young avatar barely bit back an instinctual retort of her own. If there was one thing she'd learned about Naruto in the past week, it was this stubbornness. He was incredibly kind most of the time, but when he made up his mind, he could be extremely thick-headed about it. When he wanted to. So too could she. It was a trait that they shared, one that allowed her to empathize with him. It also made her want to clobber him upside for blatantly taking a life like this. Look, the queen was a jerk, but you can't just execute her for that. Korra, no, it's my turn to talk. Surprisingly, he acquiesced to her request. I know there are a lot of messed up people in the world, believe me, still, that doesn't mean you can just go around killing them. This isn't the same as the 100-Year War. What you're doing, it isn't helping. It's murder. Lot of ways to help people. Sometimes you heal the sick, sometimes you execute dangerous people. Either way helps. But murder is murder, says the girl who killed Analek and expunged Vatu. Hey! That was different. They were pure evil. Was the Earth Queen any different? Naruto challenged. The measure of an individual can be difficult to discern by actions alone. But you didn't see what I saw. There was nothing redeemable about that woman. She saw her people as possessions, her property, and it made her bloated on power. When I came to her last night disguised as a humble citizen begging for aid, she turned my way. Why? Because she could. She ate her fine meals while her people starved. Created a secret airbending army, because she thought she could. She ate her father's pet bear for crying out loud. Per Bosco, are you saying I don't have a right to stop someone like that? Korra took a moment to consider those words. Naruto towed a dangerous line, balancing on a knee's edge between humanity and savagery. The tiniest of slips, the slightest error, and he could plummet over the edge and become the very thing he sought to rid the world of. His exploits during the war with the Fire Nation were the stuff of legend and dread. When the nobility first fought back against him for appointing Azula as the leader of their nation, he'd executed the nobles and like-minded individuals who dared to strike at him. Those who dared to fan the embers of peace and start a new war had been butchered, without hesitation. Was that a world she wanted to live in? I'm sorry, she shook her head, the motion sending her hair swinging from side to side. I just don't think you have the right to play God like you do. I have every right, damn it. A rare look of outrage crossed that whiskered visage, and for a moment she feared she might have gone too far. But not Naruto. Exhaling harshly, he steepled his fingers and laid his chin to rest on them. Korra, please hear me out. Just as it is your job to maintain balance in the world, it is mine to maintain justice. Peace. I have a vested interest in this city's well-being. Did you think I was going to stand around and do nothing when I discovered what was happening to its citizens? No. I will never turn my back on those in need. That's the kind of man I am. I'm starting to see that. Still, Naruto wasn't budging. I saved this kingdom once before. I wasn't about to stand by and let it rot from the inside out. No, sometimes the only way to save something is to rip out the weeds. All of the weeds. In a flourish of motion, he cast a stone into the pond, sending the fish scurrying for cover. You know, it's funny, really. In a weird way, she reminded of someone. Gato. Who? Someone very much like the former Earth Queen. He was a rich and powerful tycoon. A menace. His voice deepened in a growl. Extorting the people of Wave Country, slowly strangling them with each passing day. It made the poverty her look mediocre by comparison. It was my very first C-ranked mission. Back then, I was little more than a boy when I met him. I wasn't the one to end him, though. No. That honor fell to someone else. Zabuza. A hand rose to the giant cleaver strapped to his shoulders, stroking its hilt with an almost tender affection. This is his blade. Korra's eyes were instinctively drawn to the hulking broadsword on his back. She hadn't given the weapon any real thought until this instant, but looking at it up close, she recognized it. It was the same blade that their statue had him wielding. The head cleaver. They said it had bathed in the blood of entire armies and taken on a life of its own. Well, this explained how he came by the blade. Who knew? I could show you how to wield it if you like. He offered. Color flooded her cheeks. I couldn't. Come on now. Insisting, he offered her the hilt of the legendary weapon. You are the Avatar, Korra. Master of all elements. At the very least, you should appreciate the art of the blade. Besides, a flick of the wrist and his deadly weapon was coated in flame, shimmering in tongues of blue and white fire. Who's to say that you can't combine the two? A true master can channel his or her affinity through anything, be it sword or stick. And as an old friend once told me, just as the imagination is limitless, so too is the way of the sword, if you say so. Grimacing, Korra grabbed the hilt with one hand and nearly slammed into the ground. Heavy! She yelped. Naruto barked out a laugh and folded both arms across his chest, smiling at her struggle. Kubikiri's a tough old girl. She takes some getting used to. Even with her impressive strength, it took a fair bit of effort to lift the blade with one hand. Shouldering it, she felt the weight of the steel blade press down on her body. But Korra was nothing if not stubborn. Now that she'd taken on this task, she was determined not to fail. Come on, sword, work with me here. With a mighty heave, she channeled her chi into her hands and brought the head cleaver around, and the wake vanished. The once crushing weight of a blade that had claimed countless lives became virtually non-existent in her grasp. Huh! Another swing confirmed her suspicions. It was as if she were wielding a giant feather, not the blade that had once cut a volcano in half. She likes you. Naruto noted with pride. Good. Take a few swings with it. Get a real feel for the weapon. Trust me, if you can wield that blade, any other weapon will be putty in your hands. Now, try bending your chi into the blade. Any element will do, just remember that you want to coat the weapon, not incinerate. Whoosh! Wow! A blink as he stared at the orange flames sheathing the blade. You're a fast learner. Though I'm surprised you didn't use lightning. That's because I can't. What? Naruto blinked, instinctively reaching outward as she returned the blade to him. I said I can't. Wait a second. Her mentor stifled a snicker as he sheathed the blade upon his back. Are you telling me you can't cast lightning? Pretty much. Or metal bend? Nope. Please tell me Katara at least taught you how to heal. Well, yeah? Then the proverbial light bulb flickered on above her head. Hey, you could teach me. I thought you already knew how to. Not that, the other two. Me? The blonde blinked, suddenly looking abashed. Well, it's not really my place to teach you the latter. I've never been much of a metal bender. We really don't have any to work with either. But as to the former, he offered a slight bow. I would be honored to show you the art of lightning. Do you wish to learn? Yes, of course. I'd love to. Korra couldn't help herself. She bounced. Literally. She all but leapt at the chance. The idea of learning both the sub-skills of fire and earthbending had always intrigued her, but she'd had no way to learn. Lin was always too busy with her work as police chief, and it had felt awkward asking Mako to teach her after the breakup. There was really no one else she could ask. All right then. Naruto nodded. Ready to begin? At her nod, he led her down and away from the koi pond, directing her to an open area just before the palace. In her peripherals she could see a pair of Daily agents tearing down the Earth Queen's temple, alongside a number of the woman's other vanity projects. The silent agents of the city were nothing if not efficient. Give us a ring, Naruto instructed. One of them immediately broke away and bent the earth beneath their feet, the gravel and stones shifting as the architect set to work. Within mere moments Korra found herself standing in a small arena, the avatar of changed position across from her. Lightning is known as the cold-blooded fire, he began, and considered one of the most powerful fire-bending techniques. This isn't something taught lightly. In the wrong hands, it can be quite dangerous. Even lethal, in the wrong hands. But I suspect that you already know this. And she did. She'd already seen firsthand the apocalyptic power held by those who wielded lightning. The idea of having that much power in her grasp for a mere moment was somewhat humbling. In lieu of her silence, her teacher continued, there is energy all around us. The energy is both yin and yang, that is, positive energy and negative energy. In my day, only a select few firebenders were capable of separating these dangerous energies. This creates an imbalance. He gestured in a singular, flowing movement, black sparks trailing from his fingers, following his arms in an undulating move of motions. Naturally, the energy wants to restore balance, and in a moment the positive and negative energy come crashing back together. You provide release and guidance, creating BKRM. With a sudden thrust of his arm, the sparks transformed into a jagged bolt of black death, shooting upward to obliterate a nearby cloud. Exhaling, Naruto lowered his smoking fingers, the charred and blackened flesh of his right hand painstakingly knitting itself back into simple skin once more. Lightning, he finished. Korra blanched. Is that going to happen to me? Oh no. He laughed at that. It was a deep, throaty sound. My chakra and chi are in constant flux, you see. Whenever I separate them and they collide again, it always does a bit of damage to me. Back when I couldn't regenerate, it was actually a problem. Another soft chortle, something that oddly reminded her a touch of Iroh. Yours shouldn't be a problem, so long as you have peace of mind and body. Thus pacified by his words, Korra mustered up her courage and forced a nod. I'm ready to try it. You may wish to try a physical motion to feel the pathways for your chi. He gestured once more, slowing his movements for her to observe. She failed. Spectacularly. Bang! The explosion tossed her backwards on her rear, soot spraying into her face and flinging her down on the ground. What the heck? You need to calm down. Naruto soothed, extending a hand. There can be no conflict within you, or it'll just blow up in your face. Easy for you to say, Mr. Immortal. She grumbled, dusting herself off. You've had years to achieve inner peace, and you're the Avatar. You can do this, Korra. Maybe if you showed me again. Come on, you need to feel the flow. Here. Like this. Korra was suddenly and intensely aware of his body pressing up against her from behind, his ear thumping against her back. She could feel his cheek against hers, his arms guiding her into the proper pathways. Remember, once you separate the positive and negative energies, you have no control of them. You are simply their humble guide. Now lower your arm, adjust your stance like so. His hand brushed her hip, and there we go. You're getting the hang of it. Step by step he led her through the motions, bit by bit she followed his steps, until, bang, it blew up in her face. Again. Naruto was there to steady her this time, his hand steadying her from behind. You need to have a calm heart. He sighed. Right. She breathed and stepped away from him, trying not to shiver as his warm breath flooded her ears. All right. Calm. Okay, but Korra wasn't calm. Her heart was still racing from where Naruto had pushed up against her. Even now she could feel the back of her neck heating up in a fierce flush. What the hell is wrong with me? It's just Naruto, for crying out loud. Focus, Korra! Focus! Shaking her head, she closed her eyes and went through the stance once more, separating her chi, guiding it. BKRM, Korra jumped in surprise, blue eyes flying open as a blue bolt pierced the afternoon, streaking unerringly from her fingertips to pierce the heavens above. She stood there a moment, sweat beading across her brow, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps, sweat beading down her brow. I did it! She exulted, pumping a fist. Haha! Lightning champion, right here! Naruto nodded and laid a hand on her shoulder. Well done, pupil. Well, I had a great teacher. They stared at each for a long moment. Korra gulped. This was what she'd been trying to avoid. There was an animal magnetism there that drew her in, a fierceness carved into his very being. In that instant, a tiny gulp traveled down her throat. God, why did he have to be standing so close? Someone moved, she wasn't sure of who, only that their lips touched. A moment passed. Then 2, 3, 4. Finally, Naruto pulled away. Okay, what the heck was that? I don't know. Korra averted her gaze, shamefaced. Stupid. That was so stupid of me. Even now she could feel his eyes boring into her. Look, I'm sorry, MMPH. Her eyes shot open in surprise as he kissed her roughly, arms gripping her with such force she feared she'd shatter. And then the Daily ruined it. Sir, Naruto and Korra jerked apart as an agent appeared from seemingly out of nowhere. We haven't been able to track down Lady June, but a girl by the name of Liang requests an audience with you. At his baffled expression, the man elaborated. I believe she is related to her. Right, I should see to that. Dismissed, sir. With that, Naruto returned his attention to Korra. So, yeah, I'll talk to you later? Sure, she replied, flushing. Right. Sounds good. Shaking his head, he watched her go, his gaze straying to her hips. Frowning, he touched a hand to his lips, soft, just like hers. Meanwhile, in the Northern Water Tribe, achoo! Azula willfully stifled a sneeze and returned her attention to these forces arrayed before her on the icy tundra. True to her word, Suki had sent 4 of her very best warriors. Arrived by airship only hours before, they were 2 men and 2 women each, assembled before her in a neat line. 3 of them shivered quietly against the chill in the air, however. Wait, shivering? A rare frown dimpled her cheeks. Shinobi were said to be made of stern stuff, forced through rigorous training as soon as they were able to walk. Though the masks hid their faces, these 3 were clearly ill at ease with their new climate. Lee didn't seem to share her disbelief, however. The great azure dragon sniffed once, then shrieked in surprise, its slitted eyes locking unerringly upon the leader of the group. While all 4 were similarly masked and clad in flowing ebon garb, the woman who stood at their head was most certainly one of authority. The crimson trim to her attire and flowing jaden robe worn over it clearly signified their status as one of the rare elites even amongst her people. She alone remained unfazed by the cold, utterly unflinching in the face of this gale, and apparently her presence was enough to rile Azula's mount. Steady, girl, she soothed, turning her attention back to the still shivering shinobi. Beside her, Tonrak shook his head, almost in disbelief. We ask for the best, and she sends you? You'll have to forgive them. The leader sighed softly, their voice coming out muffled behind the ornate dragon mask they wore. These 3 are accustomed to warmer temperatures. Something about that voice. It set an alarm bell off in her head. Azula's frown deepened. And you are? Rude as ever, I see. The leader removed her mask, exposing long auburn hair, brown locks framing a heart-shaped face and steel-gray eyes. Well, at least the years have been kind. Without the makeup, Azula almost didn't recognize her. An even rarer smirk graced her lips, and without hesitation, she moved to greet the woman. Suki, the leader of New Kyoshi, gladly returned her smile. It's good to see you again, Azula. I wasn't expecting you. When I heard about Zahir's escape, I came as quickly as I could. She wrapped her arms around her neck with a soft sigh. This is my fight too. Still in her state of shock, it took Azula a moment to react and place her own arms around the thin waist of her old friend. She buried her face in her neck, enjoying the warmth of her skin on her cheeks and the smell of her hair in her nostrils. She felt her arms tighten around her, and her breathing quickened, her breasts heaving up and down against her chest. I'm so sorry about Ply, she said at last, pulling away. No mother should have to fight her own flesh and blood. Azula sniffed, a hand straying to the ugly scar peeking out under her collar and onto her neck, a blight on her otherwise flawless body. She's no child of mine. And Nenli was suddenly there, nuzzling at them, demanding attention. Hey girl. Suki laughed, reaching around to stroke the beast's neck. You've gotten big. The last time I saw you, you were just a hatchling. The dragon hummed softly in appreciation, veritably purring under the shinobi's touch. Azula couldn't help but shake her head. The former Kyoshi warrior had aged remarkably well over the past few years, something that, Azula mused, was likely be attributed to her chakra coils. Suki had created new Kyoshi through great adversity, after the death of their beloved husband, using only her skills and reputation to colonize one of the larger islands Naruto had created during the war for herself, her children, and anyone who wished to join her. Since then she'd managed to both rear and train an entire generation of shinobi all on her own, forming a new nation seemingly overnight, one capable of defeating an invading army from distant shores, sending them scurrying back with their tails between their legs. Legend had it that she'd been to the land over the horizon, the place from which Naruto claimed to hail. With the help of the scattered people dwelling there, a few of her clan even had, what was the term that Naruto once used? Kekai Genkai. There were those who could bend their very shadows, and those others, to their will. Others who wielded their very bones as a weapon. Some could even see through walls and cripple an enemy with a single strike, much like a chi blocker might. Azula herself had never been to Naruto's country, nor had she seen any of this for herself, but she knew firsthand the power of words. If Suki said she had an army of shinobi, then she damn well did. As the only one to whom Naruto had ever taught the intricate art of chakra, she knew techniques that could cripple even the most brutal of benders. Azula herself had learnt that the hard way. Illusions could cripple an opponent with their greatest fear, or blind them with rage, leaving them easy pickings to their opponent. Ninjutsu could never truly compare to the raw power afforded by bending the elements, but so too could it wreak unspeakable havoc on the battlefield. In the same vein, a true master of taijutsu was capable of fighting a small army on his own, but that Suki had left her people and come here personally with 3 of her best troops didn't bode well. Don't you need to keep your troops in line? I left Feng in charge, she admitted quietly, earning a slight cringe from Azula at the mention of her eldest. Tonrak sighed. Well, let's hope he doesn't start a war while you're away. Agreed, Eska murmured. I've no desire to be embarrassed by a shinobi for a second time. Her brother snorted, earning a glare from his twin. If the two of you are done reminiscing, we have a job to do. On that, they were in complete agreement. But try as she might, Azula couldn't keep herself from worrying. Naruto's son though he might be, Fon was a military man. One who'd clashed with his mother's ideals of peace many times. He wanted them to expand their influence out into the world much as Sozin had for the Fire Nation centuries ago. Ordinarily that wouldn't have been a problem. Most of their world didn't want another war. But some did. Some were even eager to settle old grudges, especially with new airbenders popping up all over the world. Unfortunately, Fon was as charismatic just like his progenitor, and nearly as powerful. He even possessed a mighty Rinnegan. Those deadly, world-shaping eyes inherited from his father. A fact he claimed gave him the right to usher in a new era, one free of the spirits that filled the world, an age in which shinobi ruled. He and his supporters remained in the minority, for now, but that could easily change in the coming days. Azula would have gladly ended him herself, but for the fact that Naruto's blood ran in his veins. Who would have thought he would create such a bad seed? She supposed Ply was little better, but still, Naruto. Yes, Naruto would have known what to do. He would have put the upstart in his place, she thought. But Naruto wasn't here. He was gone, lost to the void. Azula, there's also something else. The Fire Lord frowned. What could possibly be worse than Fon? They're saying that the Earth Queen has been murdered. By the Avatar. Azula blinked. Well, that is good news. The old hag was beginning to annoy me. I didn't think Korra had it in her, our Avatar. Suki clarified. There was a silence. All that emerged from her mouth was an undignified squeak. Oh, her heart raced, her eyes threatened to water. Compose. She scolded herself. You don't have time to worry about that now. Later. If there is a later, so how are we going to do this? Tonrak asked. Zahir's an airbender now, If that isn't bad enough, he's got Minghua and Gazan with him. Even if it's just the three of them, we'll be in for the fight of our lives if Ply manages to escape. Azula smiled. It was not a pleasant expression, Suki thought. She'd seen that same smile as she butchered her enemies, roasted her rivals alive. Oh, don't worry your pretty little head. Smiling, she pulled up her cowl, concealing her face. I have a plan. Overthrowing a government was hard work, even for an avatar. While most of the city was glad to see their horrible queen gone, the nobility wasn't nearly as pleased. They liked the status quo. The idea of commoners in the upper ring, mere peasants sharing in their wealth, was almost enough to provoke a revolt. It took an explicit show of force to keep them from trying to stage a coup. In the end, the army was on his side. The Daily, and all the benders. Without any real force behind them, the nobles were reduced to throwing petty insults and jaded looks. With no feasible ruler on the throne, it was either hunt down June and her daughters, or put Grand Secretariat Gon on that seat. The man was the polar opposite of Long Feng, but Naruto wasn't willing to take a chance on another all-powerful advisor ruling the city with an iron fist. That was his job. At least until a successor could be had, which made what he was doing now all the more difficult. He sat perched upon the throne, willing himself not to show so much as an ounce of emotion. He found it hard to believe that the Daily had already turned up evidence of June and her daughters after only a few hours of searching. But who knew? Perhaps they'd simply gotten incredibly lucky. In either case, he was determined to remain on guard until he had undeniable and unshakable proof of their existence. Excuse me? From out of nowhere, a small voice called him to attention. Yes? Naruto turned and found himself face to face with a striking young woman in her late teens, molten gold hair bound back in a loose ponytail behind her head. Her attire vaguely reminded him of a Kyoshi warrior's, but streamlined somehow, as if it too had advanced through the ages. That should have been his first warning. Bright blue eyes mirrored his own in that earnest face, intense and curious and utterly fixated upon him. That face, those eyes, his mind refused to register it. My name is Liang, she introduced herself, bowing. Please forgive my rudeness in asking you, my lord, but might you be the avatar of the gods? Naruto saw no point in lying to the girl. He didn't sense so much as an ounce of duplicity on her. Whomever she was, this girl was as pure as a ray of sunshine. Odd though, that she had a whip curled up into her belt. Yes, why? I am the daughter of Lo, daughter to June. Her eyes watered slightly as she straightened from her genuflection. I've spent my entire life in this city, and they always spoke of you before the rot took them, but even so I never thought I'd, actually, meet you one day. Her words were soft and barely controlled as she fought back a sob. Every syllable was like glue, rooting him where he sat. No. It wasn't possible. Had he really been gone so long, that he was actually looking at? A lightning bolt of realization struck him. You can't be, grandfather, oof. He choked in surprise as the girl rushed the throne and glommed him. Nearly a dozen Daily were there in an instant, ready and willing to defend them. He waved them away with a flick of his fingers, demanding that they stand down in the presence of his flesh and blood. Wait, did you say, grandpa? It all caught up with him in an instant. He was a grandpa. Moa. Naruto blew a ring of smoke and passed out, back in the Northern Water Tribe. It was time. Ply glanced up and suppressed a tiny smile as water seeped across the door to her cell, freezing and buckling the iron, sending the door crashing down to the ground. Amber eyes glanced upward, momentarily alarmed to find that not only had she not come along, but that Zahir and Gazan were present as well, the latter still levitating a pair of boulders close at hand. It seemed that they'd had easily dealt with Tonrak and the other defenders, and now, at long last, they were here to break her out. Minghua, let's get you out of here. A few flickers of her watery arms severed the chains binding her head and neck, leaving her hands free. Ply lifted the cowl of their hoods slowly and deliberately, exposing sparkling golden eyes, black hair, and no third eye. Fire Lord Azula grinned back at them, her lithe body standing framed in the dim light. There was a silence, a tense moment of terrible disbelief as everyone stared at her, this imposter who stood in Ply's place. Then she smiled at Minghua, expecting someone else? It's a trap. Gazan roared. Zahir was the first to react. Get away from her. Too late. Azula lashed out with all her might, a cone of blue fire roaring forward from her open mouth to envelop Minghua in a roiling maelstrom of heat and flame. Closest to the blast, the waterbender wasn't able to evade in time. Her water arms evaporated in an instant, and she sank to the ground, shrieking in pain. Zahir quickly lashed out with a headwind, extinguishing the flames, but the damage had already been done. He could hear his companion whimpering in pain, and even now he felt the beginnings of a cold knot begin to form in his stomach. Then he saw the shadows dropping down around them. Shinobi. It was all going wrong. To have been anticipated to this extent. Damn it, Gazan never stood a chance. Suki and her warriors dropped upon him like wraiths amidst the burning stones he flung, slamming down onto his shoulders and pinning the bender's arms behind his back. Minghua fared little better, stumbling away from Desna and Eska, weaving frantically from side to side as the tandem twigs bent entire walls of ice at her in an effort to bring the nimble if injured bender down to their level. Realizing what was happening, Zahir spun and ran, kicking up a small tornado in his wake. Azula whirled away from the maelstrom in a swirl of motion. But even as she moved, the ice beneath her bucked and shifted, trying to uproot her, the deadly spikes stabbing through the soles of her boots in an attempt to trip her up. It seemed Minghua wasn't willing to give up just yet. Grimacing, she bounded backwards, leaping up and away in a swirl of motion, hot on Zahir's heels. Still upward she ascended, shooting through the hole Minghua had carved only moments before. Side by side they raced, fire and wind. One delighting in the game, the other was filled with rage at the prospect that his beloved Ply was nowhere to be seen. Zahir considered himself quite clever, but even he hadn't expected them to risk moving her. Only the gods knew where she was now. Or maybe, where have you taken her? He demanded. Tell me, Azula trilled out, laughed, the sound echoing softly in the open air. Why don't you make me? Before Zahir could do just that, a wall of water slammed into his bee. You know, she said through clenched teeth and labored breaths as her body dodged through the icy terrain. I really should thank you for this. The former convict frowned, effortlessly keeping pace with her. What? I always regretted leaving the four of you alive that day. Now you've given me the chance to correct my mistakes. A pair of boulders suddenly descended upon them, missing the firebender by a hair's width before slamming harmlessly into the ice. Azula rolled to the side as the Gazan's sneak attack crumbled into the ground, the short sleeves of her black robe whipping about from the abrupt breeze. Where were Suki and her satyrs? With a quick twist of her body, she spun herself off the earth and quickly launched herself at her attacker. She would have made it too, had Minghua not intervened. What was going on here? From out of nowhere, a watery limb wrapped around her heel, yanking her backwards. Instead of letting anger consume her, the Fire Lord immediately swung forward with her left hand as she reached her desired speed, the airbender barely dodging the swift surge of lightning that leapt from her finger. With age came experience, and over the past few decades, Azula had reached a pinnacle that most benders would spend their entire lives trying to achieve. True mastery, she was not impeded by hot or cold nor even the constraints of emotion. Hers was a cold-blooded fire, just like lightning itself. Well worth learning that ancient fire-bending form from the dragons all those years before. In fact, she was finding that this particular form was faring rather well against the trio of benders. Whereas most firebenders would have barely had enough strength to fight for more than a few minutes in these frigid conditions, she could go for hours without rest. Already she could feel her body warming up to the battle, old instincts coming back to her as she fought, which was not to say that she was unscathed, quite the contrary. Azula had found herself dodging and narrowly avoiding almost every attack that Team Anti-Avatar continued to send her way. She was still in one piece physically, but she could feel that even her superhuman endurance was beginning to falter. Time to move to the offensive. Well, this ought to be fun. Azula cut down and suddenly vanished, whispering back into existence directly behind her startled opponent. Minghua brought her newly reforged icy arms slashing downwards, but the Fire Lord was able to move at the last second, turning a possibly lethal strike into a shallow cut that extended across her jacket and opened the stomach beneath. She skidded backwards on one foot, his heel digging into the ice beneath it. After a quick glance down at her fresh wound, her lips formed an insincere pout. In a blue blur she crossed the distance between her and her watery adversary, her fingers wrapping around the younger woman's throat. That wasn't very nice. Flames licked at the edges of her fingers. Now, I believe it's time for you to burn. The last thing Minghua saw was fire. Everything had gone to hell in a handbasket. Zahir didn't understand how they could have failed or why, only they had. Ply was gone. Not dead, just gone. He couldn't find her. The Fire Lord had anticipated their move. Instead of guarding her prison, she'd taken the combustion bender somewhere else altogether. Then she'd beaten them into the ground. Minghua was crippled and would take days to heal if at all. Gazan had lost an eye and most of his right hand. Zahir had fared little better. The ugly burns now marring the left side of his face stood in stark testament to the raw power possessed by their opponents. By the skin of his teeth he'd narrowly bested Azula, and they'd somehow managed to escape from the trap laid by their shinobi. But only just. It was abundantly clear that they'd been outplayed. He should have expected this. The current Fire Lord was a legendary tactician who'd lived for nearly 100 years, and fought in countless battles during the 100-Year War against her father's forces. Of course she was prepared for them. This time. But not the next. She was dead now, of that much he was certain. May her blighted spirit forever wander the fog of lost souls. He resolved to visit vengeance on the rest of her family at the first opportunity that presented itself. They were far and away now in their truck, well out of range of anyone who might try to pursue them. Free to lick at their wounds and nurse their burns. Their many, many burns, well, Gazan muttered. That could have gone better. Zahir risked a glance from where he sat in the driver's seat at his old friend, and fought off a scowl. He knew the Earthbender was furious with him for allowing Minghua to be burned as she was. He'd always cared about her. Not like Zahir. Without Ply he felt empty inside. Hollow. Even now he half expected to hear some witty comment from her. But she wasn't here. Everything was so different without her. Forced. There's a tension to the group that wasn't there before. Without Ply they weren't whole. Yes, he chose his words carefully, trying to ignore their companions' pained whimpers. It could have. Minghua had never been the most skilled of healers, but now she was in so much agony that she couldn't even tend to herself. Gazan looked absolutely furious. Zahir felt and empathized with that fury. They hadn't gotten a beating like that in 13 years. Granted, their foes had been lying in wait for them, but nevertheless, it should have been a closer fight. We need to get her to a doctor. The Earthbender continued. There's no way she'll recover, otherwise. A pause. You should probably get your face looked at too. We don't have time. Zahir snapped irritably. The hell we don't. He jerked slightly as the larger man reached across the seat, physically wrenching his hand away from the wheel. Just because you've lost Ply doesn't mean you get to dictate everything we do. A soft hiss fled from Zahir's lips at the mention of his lost love. Was she even alive anymore? Or was she even worse off? Azula wasn't exactly known for her kindness. Biting back his initial outburst, the airbender calmly shook himself free. Sit down. At length the man relented. Fine. We'll find a healer to tend to her. Gazan seemed too deflated at that, and returned his attention to Minghua. Zahir let him go, all the while silently seething. He would make the Fire Nation pay for taking Ply from him. Later, but his vendetta was irrelevant at this moment. Whole or not, they had a duty now. They had to find the avatars, so essential to their plan. Both of them. In a strange sense, he almost looked up to one of them. Naruto. The avatar of the gods. Killer of kings and destroyer of empires. The ultimate revolutionary. All the world was once his oyster. Nothing could stop him. He brought the walls down in Ba Sing Se and once made the city equal. Crushed 1,000 fleets. Spat in the eye of Fire Lord Ozai himself, then took his head and set it on a pike. This man reshaped the continent and gave birth to islands. He was indirectly responsible for the birth of the Shinobi Nation, and that of the Red Lotus. Rumor has it he's come back and killed the Earth Queen. A man like that doesn't let the world be, he changes it for the better and crushes those who dare to stand in his way. Zahir wondered how he'll react once he realizes his wife is dead. He won't be happy, that much is certain. It only makes their task that much harder. Up, Miwa! Azula jolted back to life as a surge of electricity jolted through her. Every muscle in her body clamped down. Her heart, once still and lifeless, hammered furiously in her chest. Hazel eyes burst open with a start, plumes of blue-white fire leaping from her lips as chi and chakra coursed through her once more. But the pain didn't stop. She could still feel the lightning coursing through her, hurting her, and she was powerless to control it. Make it stop, Joshiro! Suki's voice barked. Enough! Yes, mother. Out of the corner of her eye, a man lowered his hands, fingertips still smoldering from the discharge. Azula groaned and struggled to sit up, her arms betraying her. The North Pole was gone. She was in a bed instead, recognizing the distinctive markings of a shinobi airship. But that couldn't be right. The last thing she remembered was the North Pole, strangling Minghua. Easy girl, the leader of New Kyoshi was suddenly there, steadying her with a hand. My son kept your heart beating until your lungs could function against. You're going to be okay. She looked and sounded about as bad as Azula felt. Idly, she cast her eyes to the young man responsible for her continued existence. The youngest of Suki's triplets looked almost exactly like his father, save for his stark white hair. Is he touched by the moon spirit? Yes. Suki nodded. Just like you. You. Sokka's wife. Ah. Azula barely remembered those days. Back when everything was so chaotic, yet also frantically simple. It had been a frantic fight for their lives against Zhao's son Li. His fire-bending prowess had been on a level that had made her look like a beginner by comparison. That was something she didn't wish to relive. The Northern Water Tribe had come dangerously close to death that day, were it not for Naruto's and Aang's timely intervention. But that was neither here nor there. Her attention remained focused on another bender. Zahir, long gone, I'm afraid. He tried to suffocate you by taking the air out of your lungs. Suki finished for her. Looks like he underestimated you. Azula groaned and flopped onto her back, cheeks burning with anger and shame. She shouldn't have lost. She was the Fire Lord. The last one to spank her in combat literally had been Naruto. She hadn't lost to anyone since. But nothing could have prepared her for the sensation of the oxygen leaving her lungs, a factor she'd failed to account for. It had been horrifying, gasping for air that wasn't there. But what didn't kill you only made you stronger. Damn right he did. With a pained grunt, she swung her legs over the bed, shaking off Suki's hand when she tried to assist. We need to find Naruto. He's a target now. I'm sure he can handle himself. Suki scoffed. Remember what happened to Ozai? Azula refused to be dissuaded. 3 benders had beaten her, and 4 shinobi, Suki included, into the ground. She wanted to believe that Naruto could handle himself. She really did. But the idea that they would come after her husband was enough to cause her to break out in a cold sweat. It was also the only reason she'd kept Ply alive. Her firstborn daughter was now locked in a Perosal cooler in the Fire Nation, far, far away from where Zahir might be able to reach her. If he laid hands on him, she'd lay hands on the one thing Zahir loved more than himself. But if she could make certain that nothing happened to her beloved, that changed things. Do you still have that kunai he gave you? She asked. The former Kyoshi warrior blinked. Yes, why? Her eyes grew large. Is it on you now, Azula? Give it to me. Meanwhile, in Ba Sing Se, so how does it feel? Strange. Liang squirmed nervously from where she sat in her throne, her slim body all but dwarfed by the seat from which so many rulers had sat before her. This is all so sudden. I still think it might be a dream of some kind. It was all a bit much to take in, really. Only a few short hours ago, she'd been little more than a peasant in the middle ring. Tomorrow, she would be crowned queen. An only child with no family and few friends, now reunited with her immortal grandfather and sat on the throne in what felt like a whirlwind fairy tale drama of sorts. This didn't happen to her, it happened to everyone else, so the fact that the avatar of change, her grandpa, the man who had taken down the Fire Lord, was standing only a few feet away from her was enough to make her eyes glisten with joy. She could feel his hand settling on her shoulder, offering her comfort and reassurance. He'd even gone so far as to give her an ancient Haitian kunai. With it she could call him to her side if ever she had need for him. If she was in danger, or if there was just a time when she wanted to talk. He told her it was an item he gave only to those closest to him. Naruto couldn't quite keep the smile from his face. You'll get used to it, Your Majesty. Liang felt her cheeks burn. Could you please not call me that, grandfather? I don't think I've the right to be called that yet. Nonsense. He scoffed. You've got my blood running through your veins. You have every right. Grandfather. He opened his mouth to say more, and then something yanked him on his senses. Hard. Airship. Air rushed back into Naruto's lungs with all the force of a typhoon. His body crashed down on a deck made of harsh metal. Stars burst before his vision. Only moments ago he had been standing in the throne room with his granddaughter, happily recounting just how proud he was of her and her new status as queen. Now all he knew was this cold, hard floor pressing on his back and those muffled noises. Then he became aware of shuffling movements, his own shallow breathing, his blood rushing in her ears, the sound of voices. His voice was not among them, he realized. Gradually, this eerie world of sound expanded to blurry images, pins and needles in his limbs and louder words, though by no means less garbled. It felt like he was coming off of a heavy anesthetic. That or one hell of a genjutsu. As each of those sounds grew more distinct, he could hear someone calling to him, too. Blinking the spots from his vision, he tried to rise. Failed. Spectacularly. Blearily, he shook his head once more. Scrubbed his eyes with the back of a hand. He had to be certain. Absolutely positive of what he was looking at, or if this was some cruel hallucination of some sort. But no matter how many times he blinked, or tried to pinch himself, he realized this wasn't some illusion, forced on him by lack of sleep. He was looking up at Azula. And Suki. His jaw dropped. The former wore a perversely pleased expression. "Hello, husband," she purred. "Long time no see. Miss me?" "Ah, balls," her lips claimed his mercilessly. "What do you mean he left?" Korra asked the next morning, flabbergasted. It was well past dawn and the ceremony to crown Liang was only a few hours away. When neither hide nor hair of the blonde had been seen or reported, she'd expected to find him with the Daily, bringing down the walls again, or at least organizing something. But though she'd searched all of the upper, middle, and lower rings, nothing had turned up. Instead, a clone had found her on the walls. At least she assumed it was one of his clones. So hard to tell these days. Now it offered a half-hearted shrug. "Hey, I don't control what the boss does or doesn't do." The young avatar placed both hands on her hips, suddenly cross with herself for trying to find him in the first place. Unbidden, the memory of their kiss pounced upon her. She flushed. Was it so wrong that she wanted to kiss him again? Struggling, she shook that thought from her mind. "Well, where is he now?" "I'm not at liberty to say," came the reply. "Probably because I don't know. All I know is that he'll return when you need him. Until then, he left me with a task I needed to complete." "Come," he sat, then bid her to take a seat beside him. Reluctantly, Korra complied, laying her legs over the wall. There was a moment of shared silence between the two avatars. Together they stared out over the wall, gazing down at the crowd gathering below, waiting for their turns to enter the palace grounds. Many were here for Liang and her coronation, others had simply come to celebrate the death of the former queen. Still, it made for quite the sight, all of Ba Sing Se laid out beneath them, the impenetrable walled city stretching on for miles as the eye could see. The waterbender allowed herself a single beat just to take it all in, for herself to feel the wind blowing on her face, tickling at her hair. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he nodded. "Be that as it may, I didn't meet you up here to go sightseeing. I called you here because The Bunshin blinked, surprise etching into his whiskered features. "Looks like he's going to do it himself." "Wah, pop." Korra blinked as the shadow clone suddenly disappeared in a plume of smoke, leaving a worn-looking Naruto standing its place. Interestingly enough, he'd gained a black eye since she'd seen him last, and his clothes looked suitably singed. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But not quite. He smelled of soot and smoke, and his hair looked as though it had just been set on fire. A smile crept at the corners of her mouth despite even her best efforts. "What happened to you?" "Azula happened," he groaned, slumping down beside her. Apparently she, then Suki, decided it was time for a reunion. "I told her it wasn't the best time. It didn't go well." "Ouch, you have no idea." A hand rose to scrub ruefully at a black eye. "After they tied me up I still managed to placate him, but she still decided to burn me for leaving all those years ago." Korra felt her cheeks heat slightly at the mention of the Fire Lord and the leader of the shinobi. He wasn't with her again, was he? The suddenness of that mutinous thought surprised her. She had no claim on him. They'd only kissed once. Once! Still, in her face she could feel her cheeks burning. Right, Naruto said suddenly. "I almost forgot. Apparently, Zahir's after us. And apparently his girlfriend is my daughter, Trippy." The young man gave a small shudder. "You have no idea," Flashback. Naruto twisted aside with a subtle gust of air as an explosion consumed the space he'd occupied only a moment before. Scarce had he done so, then he was forced to raise his arms and bend again, this time conjuring up a wall of molten rock to absorb the next blast. He grimaced at her enraged shout. A combustion bender. Of course. It stood to reason that whenever he traveled there was almost always some sort of freaky bender or assassin trying to kill him. It seemed his little trip to the Fire Nation wasn't going to be as peaceful as he'd hoped, not with a maniac attacking him right out of the gate. Alright, he began slowly, drawing himself up. Who in the hell are you? And why are you attacking me? Ply glared bloody red daggers at him. I can't believe you don't recognize me, eh? Naruto blinked, her eyes narrowed hotly. I'm your daughter, idiot, eh? For what felt like the umpteenth time, those words laid him flat. Father! And flashback. 2. The blonde blinked, drawn from his memory by those words. Avatars say what now? Korra blinked owlishly. You said Zahir? Who the hell is that? He briefly regaled her with the story. Meh, just some member of the Red Lotus who tried to kidnap you and resurrect me 13 years back. God almighty, that hurt like hell. Black magic is definitely something you don't want to tamper with. All kinds of nasty side effects. Chuckling, he sat back down on the wall, sitting Saiza style. Still shouldn't be a problem for 2 avatars, eh? I mean, what are the chances? His casual dismissal of this rogue terrorist organization apparently bent on tracking them down and killing the 2 of them was somewhat troubling to Korra, but she tried to drum it out of her head regardless. Even weakened as he was, she was almost certain he could take down just about anyone. Hopefully. So, he clapped his hands, earning her attention once more. Back to what we were discussing before that little debacle. He steepled his fingers a moment, his piercing gaze falling upon the citizens miles below their feet. I know it has been difficult for you lately, not having guidance, unable to rely on the wisdom provided by your past lives. And I'm sure my heavy-handed approach isn't very encouraging for you. Her expression turned sullen. Can we not talk about it? Please? It's difficult enough being on my own in this. I wish I had them back. Actually, I believe I can help you with that. The Avatar drew back, skeptical. How? Unless you happen to have a book of Avat wisdom lying around, I don't see how that's going to help. A laugh. I can do you one better. I'll give you something I've never given anyone else. The greatest gift of all. Another kiss? Her traitorous heart skipped a beat. My life. He said. Wait, what? The Avatar of the gods took her stuttering in stride. I said, my life? It's just as you heard. When she didn't interrupt, the elder Avatar dared to continue. After this, I won't be reborn anymore. He explained, unflinching in the wake of her disbelief. I'm tired of living a life where time has no meaning, when I wake up time and time again to find that the world has passed me by. But it's more than that. When I died all those years ago in battle, I did so facing a great evil, defeated it. Sealed it within me. Entrapped it. Bound it to my very soul. I had hoped we would go to the void together, and neither of us would ever be reborn again. But sadly, that wasn't the case. Even now it's trying to get out. I fear when it finally does, I won't be able to control it. You don't mean Vata? Naruto snorted. No. Though I did meet him, once. The evil I speak of is far greater, a more immediate threat to this world. He didn't leave her in suspense for long. Her name is Kagaya Oatsuki. Though Korra knew her not, the name sent an unspoken shiver shooting down her spine. She is the mother of chakra, and she will stop at nothing to have it all to herself. To this very day, I don't know how she came back, or even how she found her way to the 4 nations. Only that she did. His visage scrunched up in pained remembrance. It was a horrible fight. We lost some good friends to her before I managed to take her down. I didn't want to risk her returning for a second time, so I sealed her away inside me in a final, suicidal attack. She's stronger than anything you've ever faced. Hell, she frightens me and I'm practically a god. A knot of dread formed in Korra's stomach. Can't you fight her? It would be like trying to go breathe without air in your lungs. The Avatar of Change said. It's impossible. So that's it. She shot to her feet, outraged at his silence. That's it. You're just going to give up. Roll over and let her win? I could energy bend her out if. No. He shook his head, the very gesture stank of finality. There is no if here, Korra. Only when. Energy bending won't work on someone like this. Believe me when I say I've tried. You'd only hasten the process. I estimate I have at least a few months, maybe a few years, if I am careful not to use my chakra or bending before she overpowers me and claims my body for herself. She did it with Madara once, and I don't doubt she'll do the same to me the moment she has full control over my body. Despair crashed over her in a wave of self-loathing. She hated it. This feeling of helplessness. Thankfully, I have a contingency plan. Hope flickered like a candle deep within Korra's chest. And that is, I'm going to give you all of my experiences. Everything I've ever seen. Known. Perhaps some of my powers will even transfer over to you in time. It won't make up for losing Aang, but my power will be your power. All the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes will belong to you, whenever you enter the avatar state. And when I die, well, this time, I won't be coming back. You'll know how to defeat her, and since she's bound to me, there's no chance of her being reborn again. She'll die, and I'll drag her down to hell, but you'll die, and I'm okay with that. He answered quite placidly. That's why I've been trying so hard to get my affairs in order. I want to leave this world a better place than it was last time. It won't be for a while yet, so long as I hold off on any major bending. How could he be so at peace with this, she wondered. How could anyone? Knowing you were destined to die eventually was one thing, but to lose your life to an ancient terror trapped inside you. It was like a poison in your blood and body. The harder you fought, the more you exerted yourself, the faster you fell to your doom. If someone like Naruto couldn't fight it off, then what chance did she have? I'm not sure if I even want your experiences, she argued, suddenly squeamish at the idea of it all. All that blood and death and gore. All the lives he'd taken, did she really wanted all that crammed in her head? Just the thought of it was enough to make her squirm. This isn't something I do lightly, Naruto replied. Only another avatar can receive my memories. And even if that weren't the case, I'd still trust you with this. You've got a good head on your shoulders, Korra. But it's more than that, you know? A hand rose lightly, cupping her cheek. You've got heart. Stupid heart. She swore at herself. Stop beating so fast. So how do we do it? Korra fretted nervously. Close your eyes, she complied. Then he kissed her. Korra acted before fear or doubt could surface to cripple her yet again. She leaned forward into the lip lock, ignoring her hammering heart, her intake of breath, and returned his kiss. The moment was as brief as it was wonderful. Her skin was burning, his rough and muscular, perfect. She took in the closeness of his body, the scent of his hair, the feel of blushing skin, the thumb. Then the memories hit and burned the world white. She saw him face down Kagaya. Severo's eyes had looked over his shoulder as he burned a fleet of airships to ash. There were terrible, painful memories there, but also good ones as well. She heard the laughter of children, the warm pride that came with having a family. And there, burning like a brand in the back of his mind, love for her. Korra's eyes flashed, and she jerked away from him, entering the avatar state without any conscious thought of physically doing so. Blue eyes bursted into blazing scara. A column of air wrapped around her, hoisting her a foot into the air, even as the wall trembled around her. Blue fire burst from her fingertips, roaring upward in a column of pure energy. She felt every drop of water in the air around her, each individual molecule, hers to be bent at her whim. She could even see the water within him, and knew what that must mean for her waterbending, galling as it might be. But it was more than that. She could feel all of nature around her, sensed the soul-searing energies coursing through her veins, lowering her back down to the ground as her focus shifted elsewhere. Korra turned her gaze inward, seeking out the source of this sudden surge. And there he was, smiling. A lone figure in the dark, where all her past lives had once been. She could see him. Feel him. It wasn't the same as the other avatars, but she could see more than 1,000 lifetimes of different tactics and experiences, burgeoned by all this power, a veritable ocean of untapped chi and energy. And she was barely scratching at the surface. So much power. She scarcely knew what to do with it. It was pure. Not so much as a hint of darkness within it. When Korra finally came to, her head was resting snugly on Naruto's shoulder, her left arm around his waist. Naruto had coiled his right limb around the soft skin of her exposed shoulders, resting his own head on hers, with great care, as though she were made of fine china. From her own spot, Korra realized their hands were suddenly locked together in a tight grip. The blonde withdrew as if touching fire. Korra slipped her guilty hand behind her back. There was a brief moment of silence. There was an uncomfortable silence between the two avatars. He tried to rise. Her hand closed around his again. "Stay," she whispered. For a moment, it looked like he wasn't going to listen. Then, impossibly, he did. He listened. "All right," he complied, sitting back down. "I don't know why you're suddenly so desperate for my attention. It's not like I'm going to die tomorrow or anything MMPH. Korra wasn't quite sure what moved her to kiss him again, only that she did. Her mouth suddenly moved against his, and this time, he made no effort to move away. They simply sat there for a long moments, enjoying the scenery. No words were exchanged, no tangling of hair were required. She felt his arm draw around the dip of her waistband, pulling her deeper into the lip lock. A tiny moan fled unbidden from Korra's lips. "Naruto, there you two are, my god?" Both avatars started apart, flabbergasted to find none other than Bo Lin staring at them. When or how he'd gotten up the wall wasn't much of a mystery for them. It was the suddenness of his intrusion that caught them flat-footed. And who could blame them? The poor boy looked as though he'd just seen a ghost. When did this happen? Mako's gonna freak. Well, he's Mako, and Korra's not dating him anymore, so I don't really know if he will freak out. Bo Naruto sighed. "You're rambling." Right, the earthbender laughed nervously. "I do that when I'm stressed, but why would I be stressed? I mean, it's not like I've seen anything distressing." The avatars simultaneously facepalmed. Bo Lin: "Sorry, so now that we've gotten the awkward out of the way, what are you doing here?" Korra asked, still painfully aware of the heat in her cheeks. "Lin wanted me to tell you Liang's coronation is in less than 10 minutes, and the two of you have less than 3 to get your." Naruto bolted upright, cutting him off in the nick of time. 5 minutes? Great, said Korra with enthusiasm, forgetting her earlier faux pas. "Let's go right now." For the second time that day the duo jumped apart, and left to join the others. Bo Lin couldn't help but wonder though, why were Korra's eyes purple for a second? The ceremony was as grand and ostentatious as one might expect from Ba Sing Se, especially when you had an all-powerful avatar presiding over it. Thousands had turned out to witness the crowning of their new queen, peasant, commoner, and noble alike, each eager to witness the coronation and see their new queen for the first time. The last Earth Queen hadn't exactly been beloved by her people. They were glad to see her gone. For someone so depraved and narcissistic, anyone would be an improvement. And Lien was certain that. She was young, but not so much as for her identity and authority to be questioned. Of course, her relation to the avatar of the gods helped, and the revelation that she'd inherited none one, but 2 bending disciplines from her grandfather, utterly unheard of until now, all but guaranteed their compliance. Tenzin couldn't help but marvel at as he watched the ceremony unfold. Liang wasn't just an earthbender, she was a talented firebender as well. He'd never heard of such a thing. It seemed every descendant of this man was destined for greatness of some sort. There was an honesty about Naruto's granddaughter, a sincerity, in her words that made you want to believe what she said. She addressed her subject as a queen should, asking only for their understanding and loyalty in this difficult time. No demands were made. No orders given in her words. Better yet, she declared that the former queen's vast riches, most of which had been taken by illegal taxation, would be returned to the people. There were a few cheers at that. The walls would be lowered once more in time so everyone could adjust, as opposed to Naruto's idea of just ripping them down and letting chaos reign, and this was met with even less reserved approval. She wasn't even crowned yet, and the public seemed to all but adore her. It would take a special kind of stupid to assassinate this queen. He almost pitied the fools who dared to try. And in conclusion, Liang finished, taking her place atop the ornate throne. "I will strive to return this city to its former glory. No cry for help shall go unheard, no voice will be left unanswered." A smattering of applause greeted the end of her speech. "Looks like everything turned out all right after all," Korra murmured beside him, her dark face lighting in a smile. Tenzin wondered about that, curious why her staunch opposition of him had suddenly changed in the last few hours. The girl had a starstruck look in her eyes, and if Bo Lin's fretful silence was any indication, something had probably happened between the two avatars when he wasn't looking. Wisely, he chose not to pry for information, instead returning his attention to the throne and Liang. Grinning like a proud parent, Naruto gently lowered the crown down on his granddaughter's head. She accepted it humbly, head bowing before her ancestors' shout of, "I present to you, Leon the First." The group cheered. Shortly after the celebration, everyone went their separate ways. Plans were made for Tenzin take the new airbenders, Feng Hua and Kai included, back to Air Temple Island. Korra and the rest, much to Lin's displeasure, would continue on to Zaofu, home of the Metal Clan. Naruto knew something he didn't, but by now the airbender was done trying to figure out what the man wanted. If he was anything at all like Korra, he probably wasn't going to rest until the Air Nation was restored. He was far too stubborn to even consider the possibility of returning to Air Temple Island with the rest of them, so he shook hands with the Avatar of the Gods, looked on as he embraced his granddaughter one last time, and watched silently as he boarded the airship, all the while trying his best to quench the niggling sensation of quiet dread he felt as the most powerful being in the nations departed the Earth Kingdom. It would be the last time they ever saw one another. Zaofu, as its name implied, it was a sprawling metropolis made wholly of metal. The city was comprised of several intricate layers, framed by ornate metal blossoms vaguely resembling an artificial lotus of sorts. At night those flowers would closely, encasing the cities in protective, and nigh impenetrable domes. But as it was day, these domes were spread open wide, their arms stretched invitingly towards any potential visitors who might find their way into the metal megalopolis, or in this case, any avatar and their airship. A pair of guards metal bent a series of wires up at them, latching onto the rails and guiding them down to dock. With each passing second, Lin felt her temper turn more and more stormy. She didn't want to be here. It brought up old memories. Bad ones? The sooner they found this airbender, the sooner they could be on their way. Sooner the better. One by one Lin watched Korra and her friends disembark. Then came Naruto. She prayed he would simply take her defiance in stride and continue on. Those prayers weren't answered. "You're staying?" he asked, pausing at the edge of Taichi's ship. "It's nothing important." Lin feigned indifference. "Just a bunch of metal." "Hooty-doo." That earned a frown from her father. "I thought you'd be at home here." "Well, I'm not, okay?" A silence passed between the two of them. "Sue's here, isn't she?" The question cut to the bone. "No. No, she isn't. You're a terrible liar, Lin," he said. "But hey, I've got an idea." Lin bristled, stifled at that unfamiliar tone, her gaze sweeping away from the guards awaiting them at the ramp and back toward her father as she heard those words. "Oh." He was smiling. Her shoulder brushed him in passing, as he took hold of her arm, blocking her reflexive attempt to flee back into the airship. There was something about that gesture, the simpleness of his tone, that sent a snake of dread coiling in her stomach, like a rat viper. He couldn't. He wouldn't. He wouldn't dare. Ah, but he would. "Dad, no." She jerked back when Naruto tried to guide her down towards the ramp. "I'm not going down there." "Yes, you are," he answered, that megawatt grin never fading from his face. "You're going to make up with your sister, and you're going to like it." Lin met those sapphire blue eyes in battle. "I said no." Naruto beeped his head and smiled playfully. "But I want so badly to hear yes." "No. I mean it," Lin said sternly, raising both her eyebrows to convey the extent of her severity. She was reminded of the tantrums she'd flung when she was younger, how he'd always patiently weathered them out in every event. This proved itself no exception. "It'll be Fuyuin," Naruto sing-songed, moving closer. "No, it will be awful." The fingertips of her gloves began to curl, reacting to her stress. "Go without me." "Not a chance." Naruto grabbed her then, a long arm ensnaring her wrist and dragging her down the ramp after him. Despite her vehement objections, Lin found herself powerless to resist any longer, the last brick of her resolve nigh but crumbling as she meekly took his hand in hers. In that instant it was as if his warmth had driven all the ice in her heart away, any lingering fears and doubts simply ceased to be. There was only the warmth of his words, too soothing to be anything else, prickling under her skin. It comforted her, reassured her, whispered quiet promises that everything would be all right. She knew at once that she wasn't going to win. Not this time, all right, but that didn't mean she had to enjoy it. Introductions with Aiwei went smoothly enough and formalities were exchanged, with the exception of the raised eyebrow at her presence. If the man knew who she was, then, he made no move to say anything. They soon found themselves ushered down an elevator and crammed into a train. The tour was mostly wasted on Lin. She steadfastly ignored everything Aiwei said, resolving not to listen in the least. So it came was rather galling shock when she found herself escorted into a larger building. It looked like a strange studio of sorts. Strangers still were the dancers within it. Belatedly, she heard Korra asking if this was some sort of training. Iway said otherwise. And for a moment, just a brief moment, Lin dared to believe that fate wasn't going to spit in her face this time. Then one of them turned around and all those hopes came crashing down around her ears. Lin bristled. "Allow me to introduce the matriarch of the Metal Clan," Iway began, bowing slightly as the newcomer approached. "This is Suin. Please call me Su." She waved his words away, her green eyes shifting across each of them. "It's an honor to meet." Whatever else she might have said dropped away as she laid eyes on Naruto. Those green orbs watered. "Dad," she croaked weakly. Is that really you?" Before he had a chance to reply to that, she rushed him in an embrace. Naruto blinked, momentarily taken aback, amazed that one of his kids wasn't trying to knock the daylights out of him. Eventually, he managed a small smile. "Hey, sweetie," Mako's sweat dropped. "Just how many kids do you have?" "Not now, detective. You're ruining the feels." "But, the feels, so this part ends here." Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comment section how was the story. And also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.